right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of A Better Conversation, a podcast put on by A Better Dallas. We're here to talk about national, state, local politics, talk a little bit about some of the upcoming municipal elections we have, the legislative session that's coming up, maybe some of the key things that we're excited about on that regard. But first, introductions. As always, my name is Chris Clement, president of A Better Dallas, joined as always by the producer, Mr. Kyle Mason.
Yes.
Who, it is not his birthday tonight, but as you can tell by the balloon, it has recently been his birthday.
Yes, my mommy got that for me, and I finally got over to pick it up, so I'm very grateful for that.
Really adds to the room. I love it.
Yeah. It is. And we are joined by a first-time guest, Mr. Colin Smith.
Yeah.
Who is in charge of outreach for A Better Dallas, has a long history of being involved in Republican politics, the college level, after college. He's also just a handsome young man. So, Colin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Long-time caller, first-time guest. Happy to be here.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We've been talking the last couple of episodes. And again, Kyle, promise Tuesday, post Wednesday. We've been meeting that.
Yes, and I feel that I will be able to do that again tomorrow.
All right. Well, here we are. So last time we talked about, some of the issues with the executive orders that Trump had laid out. We've started to see some of that actually go into effect, mainly immigration. So interested to hear from you, Colin, and you, Kyle. What has been your response to how the media and the images that you've been seeing coming out about the immigration?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think immigration, it's definitely an issue that we knew was going to be front and center. I mean, there was, the Trump administration incoming made no doubts about it that he was going to handle immigration and do it through the power of executive orders. And so I think really the prevailing image that we've seen from the Republican side and from the administration is immediacy, is urgency. It's people who are taking charge and wanting to affect the change that so many people have asked for. I think as a conservative, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see somebody actually listen to what we're saying, especially as a Texas Republican. We've been beating the drum for 4 years about how poorly the administration has done in terms of controlling the border. And so it's been great to see. In terms of the media, I think it's been mixed. We've seen everything from Selena Gomez crying on camera to to people loving what's going on. And so it's been certainly a mixed debate, I would say.
Well, Kyle, we talked about last time, I think you'd brought up the fact that we're going to immediately start seeing images of crying moms and separated families.
Yep.
Do you feel vindicated given that you've already seen that?
Well, I don't want anyone to find my crystal ball because I know exactly what's going to happen. And, we saw Pritzker, the Secret Service goes and follows up in a school on a threat. I'm guessing it was either on a senator or a House member because it was the Secret Service that was doing that. First thing that they do, run to the cameras, ICE is inside of our schools. Now, this actually brought up a really good question, and I think that Team Trump and everyone that he's hired has been really good on the media and just sitting down and just having that back and forth. And the question is, okay, well, how many MS-13 members are between the ages of 14 and 17?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. So eventually, we might have to go into schools. But anyways, the school thing turned out to be a lie. It's striking what 1 week can do. And it just goes to show that the last 4 years of there's nothing we can do about it. And we're doing panels and we're trying to find the root cause of why people are coming here and all this stuff. 2 days into the Trump administration, people are just like turning away from the border.
Right.
The fences are up. People aren't trying, they're just like, okay, it's done. It's over with, and I'm so happy that they just hit the ground running. And you can see all the agencies, all the employees in ICE, in DHS, in Texas DPS and everything. I mean, they were just trying to get off the chain to do their job. And one last thing, all these raids that have happened in the first couple of days, the Biden administration and all the agents already had the information on where these people live, where best to get them, what their schedule were, everything. But they were handcuffed and not allowed to do anything. They didn't go gather this information, 20 minutes after Trump was inaugurated and then started doing the raids. They've known where all these people are, the people, the child SA, the murderers, the drug dealer. I mean, they're your neighbors, and we've known they've been there the entire time.
Yeah. Well, and that's, first of all, when he says essay, we're talking sexual assault,
right?
Not essays. I feel like you got to clarify that here.
In this case, it is the same.
Well, I'm just saying, I was born in El Paso, grew up on the border myself.
Yeah.
Anytime I hear people say essay,
sure,
I'm not thinking of the letter S and the letter A.
Double entendre.
So here's the thing that just blows my mind, especially we see all these protests in Dallas and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, we should talk about that one.
Quite literally, all that's happened so far is the law has been enforced. That's it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about new classifications. We're not talking, and it's not even the full law. It's just been, we are targeting specific individuals that have criminal histories, that had criminal histories before they came here. They had criminal history since they've been here. And we're saying, okay, it's time to go. Yeah. And to me, I think that a majority of Americans agree that, well, number one, we would rather you legally immigrate. But if we don't want people here, certainly we don't want people here that are going to come here and break the law.
Sure.
That are murdering people, that are robbing, that are doing all that sort of stuff.
Right.
We don't want people that have come from the other countries with that on the rap sheet either. Yeah. That's just the most very basic common sense thing. And the fact that you're seeing all of this like hand-wringing from the left and from the media when ICE is going to find violent criminals and other criminals and deport them seems exactly like what they should
pretty
be
logical.
doing. What else is ICE doing, right? Like what else would our immigration enforcement officers be doing other than getting the violent criminals out of our country?
It begs the question, what have they been doing for the past 4 years, really?
Yeah.
And, you nailed it. I mean, we're really in a triage situation here. We are trying to take the people who are the most dangerous, who are the ones that are known criminal entities, taking them off the streets. And still, we're seeing pushback from a whole host of individuals about how this is terrible and how this is awful. And it's just, it's pretty amazing that this is where we are, where the debate is really, I mean, you're taking violent criminals off the street. How is that bad? And, I think you both bring up a good point where you see a lot of feedback in the media about this, about the negative coverage, really focusing on the Trump administration, their handling of this. And if you were maybe following this from afar, weren't really into it, you would think that, it was a completely different situation than what it is. And I think that begs the question, how can we message effectively for, what is actually occurring? And so I think you've seen kind of how conservatives have taken back traditionally democratic, traditionally liberal social media, traditionally liberal media in general,
yep,
and have just flipped the script. One thing that comes to mind immediately is the daily deportation tracker on the DHS. And while that doesn't exactly probably ring the bells of a bunch of liberals who might otherwise not know what's going on, it shows consistent growth and consistent progress for, flagging for people. Look, there are a lot of dangerous people in this country that we are handling immediately. And that's a narrative that needs to get out and probably needs to be spread further. So I think that's definitely something to explore.
I saw something that I think the White House was the one that released it. If not, it was maybe DHS, which was essentially like a slideshow of people that had been captured to be deported,
Right,
and the crimes that they'd committed underneath it.
Yeah.
It's just like, these are the people that's going. Right? We're not going and get somebody's sweet abuela from, from her front porch and forcing her out of the country. We're going to get the violent criminals, the thugs, the people that just never would have been able to get here in any sort of legal way anyway.
And right now it's really great because Trump, that's what he ran on, he was going to do. The polling is with him. He won the popular vote. He has the mandate. And they're moving so fast that, really until today, was kind of the first day that the left has kind of really put up any opposition to anything that he's been able to do. You know, there was the judge that put the stay on the funding thing, but that's really the first thing they've been able to do. I mean, the Democrats are still trying to have like a speech on the steps of the Senate about the J6 pardons and environmental climate change, where they're still trying to like cover for Newsom over there in California on it. I have this video that we're going to throw up here. This is the protest in Dallas. Okay. And one unique thing about this video is that there are very little American flags. Now you guys probably won't be able to hear it.
Oh yeah, I've seen this footage. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just so important because of the sacrifice that my parents made to come here.
So here's the thing, I'll just say, about this woman in particular, and the story about her parents aren't the people that are being deported. No. Right? Like, unless she's outing her mom and her dad for being violent criminals, which I doubt she is, right? Like, her parents, they came here either legally or illegally. I also like how often when you go to some of these rallies and you ask people, oh, no, their parents immigrated here legally.
Yeah.
They're not children of illegal immigrants. And it's like, okay, well, that's not even what we're talking about.
Right.
We want more people like your parents. We love the legal immigrants coming over here. We just don't want people that are violent criminals illegally immigrating into our country.
Crossing our border unchecked.
And if we catch them, if we know where they're at, we're going to go get them.
Yeah.
And because that would be the question I would have for everybody at that rally, is I'd pull up that slideshow and I'd be like, tell me which one you want to stay.
That is,
Right?
But that would just fall on deaf ears because they eat hook, line, and sinker the leftist propaganda on this of like, this is all a cover. What they're really going to try to do is round anyone up that's brown. Like and they do believe that. That's the thing. They believe that wholeheartedly. Or there's the fear of, well, they're starting with those people, but what happens? Well, it really actually sucks because there's so many of those people, the criminals, that it's going to be a while if we wanted to continue down this road. We're looking at like roughly 15 million people over the last 5 years. They come and go, so it's like kind of hard to track. But those are just the ones we know about. You know what I'm saying? So it's like 10 to 15 million, however you want to sway it. Some come and go and are seasonal and whatnot, but I just got to say this. I mean, obviously we're only 8 days in, but boys got to step it up. You got to get those numbers up.
Well, obviously, is there a tracker? Do we know?
I think they might have posted it today. They normally post it in the morning.
Let me pull it up while you guys continue to talk, because there's a lot of numbers going around. One is apprehensions from ICE. Then there's total DHS deports.
Right, sure.
And then there's a number of people that they turn around at the border as well.
Yes.
And so depending on what number you are looking at, but roughly on his interview today on Megyn Kelly, he was like roughly 8,500.
Have been deported so far?
Yes. And that is mostly from the raids.
Right. So congratulations, America. There are 8,500 less criminals. Because these are the people that are being targeted for deportation.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not a win? In what sane world is it not a win to take 8,500 violent criminals, thieves, drug dealers, whatever it is, gang members, take them off the streets and deport them back to their countries of origin?
It's definitely a win, and man, leadership really does make a difference. I saw this a lot in the military of like, hey, morale was absolute crap at certain commands, and the difference, one leader, you don't even have to change out the whole triad. You just change out one person, just changes everything in an organization. And Donald Trump with the situation in Colombia.
Right.
Yeah.
Turning away.
Yep.
really we had him over a barrel and that's the thing. Like everyone here talks about, oh, Trump and all these tariffs and he's going to take the Panama Canal. I'm like, dude, I don't think you're grasping. He is just simply throwing around the weight of the United States so we can get things done very quickly, rather than if it's the Biden administration or the Obama administration, like, okay, bring the plane back. Then they're going to want to do, you know what I'm saying?
Talk it out.
We would now be just holding these people for 12 weeks.
Well, this is the thing that I like about having a prepared administration, because before all of that happened, before the plane even took off, Marco Rubio, as our Secretary of State, was already talking about the fact that Cuba and Colombia were going to be issues. Because, or no, maybe it was Venezuela. But he's just talking about how we had some countries that we did not have agreements with.
Right.
And that we needed to be able to take the steps to secure those agreements before we start deporting them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, we actually have a State Department that's not worried about like posturing for their cocktail friends in mid-Manhattan. Instead, they're legitimately trying to do the job and make sure we have the agreements in place. So when we do deport, we can, and they got to take them.
Yeah.
And if they don't take them, there's hell to pay.
Right. And this goes back to what we were saying before, is it begs the question, why do the countries of origin not even want to repatriate these individuals? This is not just a return home for a group of citizens that were otherwise, well loved by their communities. Right. Oftentimes, I mean, these are individuals that the countries of origin do not want back, and that's something that's very, very important. One thing that I thought was interesting was the Trump administration was reported to be in talks with El Salvador, creating a third-party country where you could hear migrant claims, you could adjudicate cases and really look at things, and so those individuals did not have to stay in the country while those cases were being held. That's a sort of prepared policy and complete policy that you can expect from a White House that is competent and understands what's going on and understands the scale of the issue that we have here. I mean, in reality, we have more illegal immigrants here than the entire population of New York City. I think it's important to bring that to scale, to tell people, I mean, look, this is not a small problem. This is not a problem that can simply go away quickly. It's something that we're going to have to do diligently and, in accordance with all rules and policies. So, it's great to have an individual and a group of people that understand what they're doing back in the White House, especially as a Texan, especially as someone where, they do say every state is a border state now. Texas really is. Texas has been leading this fight for 4 years. And you see this dynamic all the time where when there's a Democratic administration, Texas really leads the fight in terms of fighting back.
Everything, lawsuits.
Right.
Like our AG, Kim Paxton
Yeah.
is just rapid fire with these things, because everything that Washington does, it seems like we're just fundamentally at odds with the Democratic administration in Washington. They're anti-energy, and that's like our entire economy along the coast, right? They're open borders, which obviously we have a massive border with Mexico, and so just like it's almost impossible not to be bumping heads with these people. But like what you said, when their own country doesn't want them back, that they incentivize those people to leave.
Well, it's also like
what the fuck?
We're putting a plane load of criminals at the airport for you.
Right.
Right? If these are people that have been on the lam, if these are people that were criminals and escaped your country, hey buddy, send them straight to jail. Right? Like here's this guy, he's been wanted for murder for 4 years because he's been living in Utah. Yep. Congratulations, he's back. Put him in jail.
We found him for you. Right? I mean, and I don't know what their laws are there as far as prison time or death penalty or anything like that, but it's like some of these people are really bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, you killed how many people? I don't see I don't know what the internal politics are, and I'm sure there's a lot of issue with gangs and things of this nature, but do they not have the death? I mean, do you just have to keep stacking these people up?
Yeah.
But one thing that was funny about this guy's entire rant, the president of Colombia, is it's just absolutely lost upon him about how much money we send down to him and the rest of the countries around them for a bunch of different stuff, you know.
Right.
I think it was the president of Guatemala. She was talking about, well, you have a military base there and you don't pay anything for the land or anything. And I was like, yes, keep talking. Let's shut down another base. Like, we were like, yes, there's a possibility we could shut down the base. Now, here's the truth about the base. We probably train, you know, militia groups and things like that, you know, to do Ronald Reagan type stuff. But it's just like, we could shut down a base. I think that would be fine. We could shut down another base. We don't need to, but these I just Googled how much money do we give to Colombia, and here's a number from 2017, $1.5 billion, you know, with accordance of implementing peace in the area. So whatever that means, and how much of that goes to those politicians, I bet very little that actually gets out into the public.
Honestly, I think that's money well spent. I mean, we were just talking about spending, before the show, $1 billion educating 100,000 kids.
Yeah.
If I can buy influence over the whole country
Sure.
for $1.5 billion, it seems like money pretty well spent.
I would like to see, and I forgot where I heard this, maybe it was today or the other day, but, you know, we have this huge trade deficit with China, and all these different things are built.
I'm sorry, sir.
China.
Yeah. We have it's the new administration. It wasn't
You
in the
gotta go
executive
back.
orders. It needed to be. That would have been amazing
That would
if
have
there
been
would have been. We're changing the definition. It is now China.
I would have loved for him to just sneak that in. One little line item. Who knows if anybody would have noticed.
He really
but-
hasn't said it much, has he? He hasn't said China that much at all, which he's kind of picking his battles pretty well right now. Like the whole Russia thing, you know, he's talking to Russia and China differently than he just talked to the president of Colombia. I think he's really like thinking like, I really, you know, I gotta mind my P's and Q's. But like, for instance, we have a trade deficit with China. They like with textiles and this and that. And that. I mean, like, why not build like factories and stuff there to incentivize people to stay there? I know it's not our job. I know it's not our job. However, if we're going to have the Monroe Doctrine, where this hemisphere is ours, and we're going to be the alpha, like you said, buying influence, what would be better than to do something like that?
We're doing some of that, right?
Yeah.
Like we do a lot of that with Mexico. We do a lot of that with Mexico.
Yep.
I have a theory about Trump's foreign policy.
Okay, let's hear it.
My theory is that Trump has never stopped being a New York real estate developer. That is still inherently the way his brain is wired. Peer company or peer countries. Now, there's no peer to America, but like close peers.
Sure.
Trump treats them the way he would treat like another rival developer, somebody on equal footing, or maybe a building owner that he's trying to get a deal on or something like that.
Okay.
He treats all other countries like vendors. Like he treats them like crap. He'll make idle threats. He'll bully him. He'll money whip him. He'll do all of that sort of stuff. That is that's my theory of what the Trump plan is. So with Russia and with China, I legitimately think that Trump thinks he can wheel and deal that stuff.
Yeah.
He looks at Putin. He looks at Xi Jinping, and he doesn't see like geopolitical peers.
Hostile actor.
He's like, oh no, you know, I can get $100,000 off this building or whatever. Like, oh, I can get, you know, them to acquiesce to these terms. Like, I just think that's how he looks at it.
It's interesting. It's definitely a carrot and stick foreign policy. It's definitely more of a relative gains instead of an absolute gains foreign policy, to say the least. You know, he definitely understands the realities of the world in which he operates, which I think personally is very refreshing. Yeah. I mean, if I have to read one more, you know, Foggy Bottom State Department research paper about X, Y, and Z, you know, I'm going to scream. I think somebody who understands like the true human nature of some of these conflicts is impressive. I mean, the story goes that he was golfing when he was negotiating with the president of Colombia, and you know, by hole 6 the problem was there, and then by hole 9 the problem was fixed. You know, and so that's somebody who understands how to get things done. You know, it's a businessman, it's a person who can negotiate, and that's something that I think has been missing. It's something that I think will be very interesting as some of these problems crop up that are maybe a little bit more complex. It's not just, look, we give these guys $1.5 billion in foreign aid, according to this. We have all the leverage in the world. It was, to put it diplomatically, unwise for them to get into this fight with us to begin with. I'll be curious to see what happens with a Russia, with a China, where things get a little bit more difficult. It's going to be interesting to see. I think, tariffs, specifically with Texas, it's going to be interesting. With Mexico, with Canada, but obviously specifically Mexico for us, we're going to see how that goes. But the negotiations are going to get only more entertaining. The one guarantee out of a Trump administration is that there will be entertainment.
Yes.
Guaranteed.
Thank God. Because I need a laugh, man. I have got to laugh.
Were y'all not entertained by Biden? I was thoroughly entertained by Biden. It wasn't like a good entertainment. It was like...
It was a dark seeding depression laugh.
If you don't have to laugh, if you don't cry, laugh, you'll cry kind of thing.
Yeah,
I look at it like this. Donald Trump is entertaining like the Transformer movies are entertaining, right? It's bombastic, not always like the most in-depth plot.
Yeah.
But if you want to see explosions and, Megan Fox, it's going to be there. You're going to be entertained at the very basic level. Biden administration was entertaining like watching a horrible movie, like The Room, or something like that.
Exactly.
Where it's so awful that you can't help but laugh at the absurdity of his existence.
I would say the dialogue is pretty similar to The Room, too.
Also true.
I honestly, probably after year 1, really started feeling bad for the guy. Like, honestly, like every time I heard him speak, I'm just like, dude, this is like elder abuse, man.
It is.
Yeah.
So of course there's there's tons of memes like him wandering off in the woods and stuff like that. It's like all that's funny, but man, I just want to win. Like I just want us to win. I know that the future looks so bright. And Texas has so much to gain.
Absolutely.
So much to gain by America winning.
So the winning that I've really liked, and the winning talk that I've liked from specifically J.D. Vance, I've heard him say this a lot, is talking about common sense.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, this is a common sense administration. Like the things that we're doing are just blatantly common sense. And I think that's been missing so much in the sense that instead of trying to have these like big heady discussions about things, it's just like, wait a minute, if you, it's like, what was it, the press secretary today said that they had uncovered
$50 million for condoms.
Condoms for Gaza.
See, when I hear stuff like that, I know it's not really spending money on Gaza.
Yeah.
It's just dark money, and they're buying weapons for someone, or they're paying off some sheik, or like just it's something like that. It's not actual, like the whole thing about Pakistan and like the teaching about transgender, whatever it was. That money is not, I don't believe that money's actually going to that. Maybe some of it, but I don't know. And I don't know why they choose to label things the way that they do, because it just sets off giant red flags.
That's the point I was going to make, is the fact that they would even feel comfortable labeling it that way, even if it is something else.
I mean, it's
the fact that they would consider labeling
because
it that
you
way
guys
is
are
crazy.
applying common sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? You're not thinking like a liberal in the Biden administration that thinks that it's a really smart idea to teach Pakistanis about transgenderism because maybe they will stone less people to death. Or, let's give condoms to Gaza.
Yeah.
So,
like, come on, dude.
I don't know what the plan is there, but
It's
for them, like, buying condoms and transgender curriculum makes all the sense in the world. Nobody bats an eye at that.
I mean,
I bet if it was the flip side, if you were to say like, oh, we're gonna send a bunch of Bibles to Gaza, $50 million for Bibles for Gaza, the left, their hair would go on fire. So I think it's just a matter of perspective. But
Sure.
To your point, Kyle, 100%. There is no way that they're spending $50 million buying condoms.
I mean, that's a lot of condoms, man.
You would know, baby
know?
guy, right? I wonder what the Navy budget is for that.
We don't use condoms. We have no idea. And here's the thing.
See,
that's why you don't see that line item on the DoD thing, because they've tried and they're like, this is not working. Let's just buy another jet that doesn't work.
And that's what whoa. And that hurts me to hear, like that, the Gaza, the men in Gaza are having their sexual health more monitored than our own boys.
Yeah. Well, I will say this: the orders that have been coming down with Pete Hegseth and everything have definitely been. I will say there is optimism. However, there is some confusion on, for instance, I got these stories pulled up, and I did not come up with this term.
See, this is why he's the producer.
He's got it all set up.
Yeah, I did not come up with this term, but these things, for instance, about the DEI. I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but someone, and we call this the deep state. This is an example of the deep state. Someone inside the DoD, when the DEI order came down, we're not going to be teaching DEI. We're not going to have people do these 2-hour classes and almost like a level 1 CCP struggle session type situation where everyone's just like, wow, this is really awkward. They immediately put out, okay, fine, we won't teach about the Tuskegee Airmen anymore. We're not going to teach about the Tuskegee Airmen, which is if you don't know, it's the first like all black air fighter squadron that fought in World War II, right? And they have a couple famous people there. They have confirmed kills, things of this nature.
Couple great movies.
One
Great movie. Red Tail, I think it was called. Red Tail was George Lucas's. It was
right. Yep. Yeah. And so what you have here is you have people inside the administration that are going to make these headlines because the news, the left news is waiting for something to happen like that. Pete Hegseth immediately steps up and says, hey, this is not what DEI is. We're going to teach about the Tuskegee Airmen. We're going to teach about the history. We're going to teach about, DEI is not teaching about the first black this, the first black that. It definitely can, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that, right? And we are proud of the different, like the Tuskegee Airmen and things of that nature. But
this is a thing that I love, right? That's a common sense response.
It's a common sense. Yeah.
Some idiot within the DoD does something dumb to maybe even try to create a headline, or at the very least, some headline is pulled out of it. And the Secretary of Defense just comes up and says, okay, obviously it doesn't apply to that. Yeah. If somebody was misconstrued that, it doesn't apply to that. Just a real simple common sense response.
It's like malicious compliance is kind of what we're trying to land on a term here on the right. But it's like when you ask your kids, hey, go put your shoes in the shoe basket. They stomp over there, they pick up the shoe and they throw it in the basket. They did what you asked, but they threw a fit about it and their attitude was all messed up. So you got to go, beat that ass. But it's like, that's what's going to be happening, and we're going to have to stay in front of this stuff, just like with the order today of the funding freeze. So what was the first thing that came out?
VA loans.
Yeah, VA loan. You're not going to get a VA loan.
Medicare.
You're going to, they're not going to give you any medicine. If you're on, supplemented income, you're not going to get any of that. Now, could the order have been more clear? Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The order could have been more clear. I think that's probably the first time the administration has put out something that wasn't like super clear.
Right.
Which gives the left the room to run very quickly.
Give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Too.
Exactly. And so look, they'll have to work on that, and they'll probably have to. The judge put a 1-week stay on it, so now we got a week to argue about it. But I think that what we're going to find out here in the next 365 days is there is a massive amount of fraud, and we're going to need to build another white-collar prison. Because I think there's a lot of people that are absolutely hand over fist the federal government right now.
No, absolutely. There's no way they're not. There's no way they're not. Like,
taking that money, bro.
Yeah.
Just with fake everything. And it's just like, it's like the $50 million on the Gaza thing. But I've worked in supply in the military, right? Bro, you never seen money get spent so fast.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like, hey, here's a $30,000 credit card. You have to max it out every month.
Right.
I have to spend it. Yes, you have to spend it, and it's all authorized, right? Everything is above board, but you are ordering stuff. And I think if you're holding defensive stocks right now, not financial advice, but I've definitely sold mine because I think there's going to be some massive audits about how much they're charging for parts.
Oh, for sure.
And their stock prices, their earnings are going to evaporate to nothing.
Well, Republicans never get the benefit of the doubt with this stuff too. I mean, they just don't. You have one order that's could be a little bit more clear, could have, been worded a little bit better. They release an FAQ about 3 hours later. The headlines for 12 hours have been, oh my gosh, the world is ending. They're pausing literally everything. That would never have been the case just 6 short months ago. And, I think one of the running jokes, I listen to the Ruthless podcast from time to time. One of the running jokes that they have on there is that the easiest job in Washington is a Democratic press secretary because the media does your job for you. And I think this is a prime example of that flipped. The script is now flipped. Republicans are in charge, and you're not going to get that benefit of the doubt. So unfortunately for us, you have to be better. But fortunately for us, we are better. So...
Well, and this, again, and I'm going to beat this dead horse, this goes back to the common sense stuff, right? Yeah. If you're sitting there and saying stuff to the American people that makes sense, they're like, who out there thinks that we are paying too much in taxes, right? Nobody that has a real brain. But like your average normal citizen, sure, Noam Chomsky probably thinks that we should pay more taxes, and Bernie Sanders too. But like your average everyday American, everybody thinks that we should be paying lower taxes. Shouldn't be giving that much money to the federal government. Too much of my check goes to Washington, goes to Austin, whatever.
Especially what we get back.
Right. Once you start knocking that stuff out and being like, oh, by the way, the Department of Government, whatever, the Doge Department, efficiency. Yeah. Oh, we found $13 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. Right? We eliminated these stupid programs. We eliminated the stuff where people were being compelled to spend a certain amount of money each month or each quarter. Yep. We had all these government employees that quit because they had to come back to work. Oh, it doesn't seem like we needed them. Like, you just start having that stuff on there, the American people will feel it. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, this whole thing about the media being able to pull the wool over people, I just don't think that exists anymore.
Yeah, it's dead.
I think you have a dedicated set of Democrat voters that are going to vote blue no matter who, and those people are going to listen to the media. They're going to listen to legacy media like it's gospel. Sure. And they're going to do that. And you're going to have your Republicans on the right that are going to listen to Fox or OAN. What is it?
OAN. Newsmax.
Yeah. They're going to listen to them. They're Natalie. What's her last name?
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Oh, you know who I'm talking about.
I don't know who you're talking about.
With Bannon.
I don't know.
Oh, Natalie Winters. They're going to be tuned in to Natalie Winters.
This guy definitely knew.
Checking out her stories for the news. And what you're going to end up having is like this group in the middle that just is like, I don't trust any media source, but the stuff that Trump is telling me from the White House feels right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And deporting violent criminals, that feels right. And eliminating $50 condom purchases for Gaza, that feels right. Those are common sense moves.
Yeah. And, they're going to trust the long form 3-hour interview from Joe Rogan where they get to listen to JD Vance. They get to listen to President Trump say.
They get to listen to Colin Smith.
Exactly. And they get to listen to these candidates and say, look, like, this is what I actually believe. No BS. No cropping, no media manipulation. Here's what I think. They're going to turn that on when they're working, when they're working out, when they're doing whatever, and they can get it directly from there. So I think media has changed. Alternative media is definitely the new power source. We should be eternally thankful to Elon Musk for his purchase of Twitter, X. I will call it X because we were thankful to Elon Musk. Yep. And, I think one primary example of this is in the White House briefing room today.
Oh yeah.
They had on the
yeah.
left-hand side, they had all your legacy outlets, your XYZ. On the right, you had the War Room. You had, I think Axios was the first question, actually, from Caroline Leavitt. So the dynamics have changed, and it's an exciting time. I think ultimately it's going to be beneficial to us. So, we're not fighting a game, not fighting a battle with one arm behind our back.
Yeah.
Colin, do you listen to NPR when you go down the road?
No.
Oh, you don't?
Can't say I do.
Damn. Okay.
Can't say that's on the top of my list.
We're gonna have to pull some strings and get this NPR taxpayer-funded far left media outlet and their compensation package that Mike Cernovich put out. Some of these people this is just another example of a scam. Mike Cernovich put out compensation, and if you look at the president and CEO, over $500,000 a year.
Oh my gosh.
Some of their hosts are getting close to 500,000, 440,000, 436,000. Anyways, I think if we make a couple calls, they can funnel that money here to a better conversation, and then I could just do this full time.
Yeah.
So, and I'll just throw this out here. I will do it at 1/4 of the cost of the CEO. That's my thing.
You're kind of price is writing it. You're kind of undercutting them a little bit. I like that.
It's an offer they can't refuse. I mean, I'm saving the American taxpayers tons of money.
I'll tell you what. I'll do it. I'll do you one better. I'll do it for a number 2 at Chicken Express.
Oh my god!
Each time we record, I'll host it for that. That's better than money for me.
You got to have the voice though that the NPR hosts have. I don't know what it is. It's that special, very soft spoken thing. I don't know how they do it.
It's like you're when you're in elementary school and the teacher would come up behind you. They're helping with
during nap time.
Yeah, it's like during nap time, or they're helping you with a question and they're whispering to you.
Yeah,
and you're it feels comfortable and they're here to help. That's the voice that
it's very soothing.
Yes, it is. It's very nice, but the truth is that it's the American taxpayer is paying for essentially what has become a left wing outlet. And maybe there was a case for back when NPR was founded that, there's not a lot of news outlets. But now, here we are. Anyone can do this. Anyone can do this on their phone. Everyone has a phone. There's no reason. And this right here is a great, boom, take that out. And these are all drops in the bucket that, yes, we all know that the biggest things on the budgets is the Social Security.
Mandatory spending.
Yes. And the mandatory spending, we understand that. But drops in the bucket definitely help, and kind of like what you were saying, as these things add up, the American people are going to be like, damn, that was a lot of money on what? And so they'll start to get more open to the idea of maybe raising the retirement age a little bit, or maybe, hey, instead of all this money going right into Social Security, I can put it into a IRA and slowly grow out of this thing or something. It will open up ideas for them.
One thing's for sure, I'd rather pay for Chris's Chicken Express than for $500,000 of NPR salaries. You heard it here first.
Yeah,
I will pay for Chris's Chicken Express over that.
Yes.
That's saying a lot. During the Biden administration, I think it got $3 more expensive.
Yeah.
Chicken prices are going up.
Yeah.
All these expensive people cutting up chicken in Alabama now is driving up the prices in the drive-thru.
Yeah.
Link back to the last episode on that combo. So the NPR voice, gentlemen,
He's got it.
That's perfect.
If you want to do the NPR voice, you just have to be very deliberate in how you speak.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make sure that you're not talking through your nose at all.
Right.
And
Don't even have a
really,
nose.
You should probably smack your lips just a little bit for that ASMR effect.
You've been practicing this.
So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about smooth jazz. No,
I was just about to say,
government give us money.
So,
but
we've been talking. So there's a couple things we've been talking about there that's kind of teed up something that I wanted to discuss, and that is how do Republicans need to think about messaging? How do Republicans need to go about winning the battle of ideas? That to me, so if I were to have a policy philosophy, one of my philosophies would be don't pass something if you can't get the public to support it. Don't pass a bill if you haven't done the work to get the public behind it first. And so when we're talking about things like immigration, right? We need to win that battle of ideas.
Right.
We need to spend the time to convince the American public, or at least 50 plus 1% of the American public, that, hey, it's a good idea to get rid of these violent criminals. Hey, and if we're past the violent criminals, you know what? The people that are here and that are on government assistance, like that are a net negative, these people are the ones that need to go next, or however you're going to do it, whatever steps you're going to take. And the other one is, I mean, I'm going to use NPR as an example. You know, NPR is such a feel-good type of thing for the government to fund, right? For most Americans, NPR is totally unoffensive. I don't know why you wouldn't want to give a little bit of money to NPR. How much are we spending on that, really? Right. Or the big one. And this is the one that, honestly, in my opinion, is one of the most important things, is how do we fix our entitlements? How do we fix Social Security? Because right now, if you talk about it at all, if a Republican mentions changing the age, oh, you're throwing grandmother off the cliff in a wheelchair.
Immediately. She's dead.
So, Colin, I'm sort of interested in your thoughts on, and it doesn't have to be either any of those issues, or it can be. Just how do we message better? How do we sell the American people on the idea before we push it through the legislature?
Yeah, you know, I think one thing that really comes to mind front and center is you have to know your audience. I think, you know, if you're talking to a group of people like us, where you're sitting here and these are three people sitting on this couch that will, more likely than not, we will never receive a single penny of Social Security. Or if we do, it will be very, very limited.
Colin, I'm really flattered that you think that I'm that young, but I mean,
You're 20, right? But you're sitting here and...
I'm closer to Social Security than I am to college, I think. I don't know. I'm getting there.
Well, you know, regardless, I think that it is interesting that, you know, we are far more open to hearing an argument on that, where maybe there needs to be some sort of examination of how we approach funding for Social Security, how that is funded in the future. We want to make sure that it's sustainable. We want to make sure that, you know, the people sitting here can access it just like our grandparents did, and just like hopefully our parents will. You know, this is something that you have to understand your base. You have to understand who you're actually trying to message to. I think it gets a little bit more difficult on the federal level because everybody's hearing everything all the time now. I think on the state level, it's a little bit, you're able to be a little bit more targeted in terms of who you go after and who you try and persuade. But I think, you know, groups like A Better Dallas and others, you know, they do a good job of focusing on who are the individuals that we actually want to persuade. It doesn't have to be everybody all at once, and it can actually be different messages for different people. I'm not saying conflicting messages, but there's something that might resonate with a group of moms who are worried about education and safe neighborhoods might not be the same as a grandfather who's worried about Social Security, you know? So I think that Republicans need to do a little bit of a better job in not dealing with just absolutes. A lot of the rhetoric now, and I understand it, you got to get through, you got to break through this constant information cycle, but I've seen that there's been a lot of absolutes there. If you don't do X, then you must be Y, or we have to do X in order for Y to not be the case. I think a little bit more nuance there and a little bit more targeted approach is probably the way to go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of how specifically to do that, but that's the one thing I see is a little bit lacking in terms of overall messaging right now, at least from a federal level. I think Texas, we do a pretty good job of it overall.
Well, the most important thing, and this worked for Kamala Harris, is kind of
Kamala.
No.
Let me use my Kamala Harris. Maybe my NPR voice.
Are you saying it right, or am I saying it right?
Yeah, my NPR voice.
NPR's taking over our podcast.
All right.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, it worked for her. Talk in the accent of whoever you're talking to.
You know what? What proved that point is that when I said Kamala in the NPR voice, you immediately thought that I was wrong because it was in NPR voice.
I was like, no. I think I said it right, but I don't know because
If a young lady from the war room had said Kamala, you'd have been like, that's the one.
So, anyways, yes, only about the absolutes. I've seen this kind of bring it to a certain topic with this immigration thing in the last 2 days.
Sure.
I have seen Republicans starting to fracture so quickly on this thing. I don't know what the vision that they had of what this thing was going to look like. I envisioned exactly what's happening. You have guys that are dressed up. They go knock on a door. I haven't seen too many get kicked down or anything like that, but they put someone in handcuffs. They put them on a bus, and they send them home. Some of those homes we've found a lot of drugs, money, guns that they weren't supposed to have, things of that nature. And that's kind of what I thought it was going to look like. However, apparently that's not what people realized what this thing was going to look like. And they're already starting to kind of give into that, I guess, social pressure or fear of, oh my gosh, I mean, is this really what, and I think that they're selling it too hard personally of like, well, no, we're just going after like the bad guys. Well, we're going after the bad guys first, but let's not start selling ourselves short on our own political promises, right? We said that we're going to deport millions of people. Let's not forget how many millions of people Barack Obama deported, and there wasn't a single picture of AOC hanging off of a fence crying, right? It's like, this is okay. This is what the American people want. It's the law that we need to enforce, and these people need to go and stop taking advantage of us. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, where you have your soft Democrat who has been fed up with the way that cities have been run in the past 4 to 8 years after COVID, spike in crime, your San Francisco Democrat or whatever. I think that the message to them can be, look, this is no different than what we're doing, what Obama did. At this stage, this is exactly what Obama did. And, look, we're making your community safer by doing this. Yep. This is one of the many things that Republicans are trying to do to have a place where you can live, work, and raise a family. That's a message that would resonate to them. To the person who doesn't have a college degree, who is working in manual labor, saying, look, we want to make sure that you get a fair shake. When you're looking for a job, we want to make sure that you're competing with the best of the best for Americans. And that's who we want to do. That's what we want to make sure that you do. That's another message that you can say. And those are consistent things. You're not being manipulative, or you're not being, saying one thing and then doing another. It's just that the detail and the message that you are emphasizing to different groups is different.
Yeah.
But it's the same message, and it's the same action behind it. And I think that is where we can really pick up a lot of speed, with a whole host of different groups.
So here's my point on here's my thing on polling. Okay. Pew poll from November 2024, post-election.
Recent, nice.
Right? The question is, 64% of adults polled said that there should be a way for illegal immigrants to stay legally if certain requirements are met. And only 35% said that under no circumstances should they be able to stay here legally. Right? So if the question is just a matter of enforcing immigration law to where if you're here legally, you stay, if you're here illegally, you go, we're 64-35 underwater on that. That is not the time to be pushing a overall, if you're illegal, they should be deported.
Sure.
But here's where when we start talking about what those conditions are, pass a security background check, 79% of those polled said that the people that are here illegally, for them to stay, they should have to pass a security background check.
Absolutely.
Which means the messaging right now, I don't think is bad.
No.
To say, hey, look, what we're doing is we are deporting the people that wouldn't pass a background check. Yeah. The people that have criminal history. The public is with us on that. You're going to take some hits for sure. Sure. Because seeing people pulled out of their jobs even if you know that they're criminals, right? Seeing somebody pulled out of the job and thrown on a bus for a good chunk of Americans is not going to feel good. They're not going to like the way that makes them feel, especially when you have that person's wife, mother, kids crying and screaming in the background. Number 2 on this Pew poll, as far as what the conditions are, have a job. 52% said that should be required, and only 7% said that it should not be considered. So you're talking about 93%, well, not quite 93% because there's a little bit of fluff. 91%
Yeah, you're good.
of people polled said that it should be a consideration about whether or not somebody has a job.
Yeah.
So just right there, those first 2, criminal, or are they not working, and are they a drain on our society? A vast majority of Americans would agree that, yep, that should be considered about whether somebody stays or goes.
Yeah.
That's where you start building your policy from that.
Sure.
And just if you want to go to the route of saying, okay, everybody that's here illegally needs to go, then you need to have something for the American people to get them on that boat before you start pushing that policy or implementing that policy.
Yeah, and by and large, I personally think that Democrats are the party of broad thinking, what if hypotheticals. They love living in a hypothetical world where, well, what if X, Y, and Z happened? How would you feel? Blah, blah, blah. The more granular you can get, the more you can say, well, here's what's actually happening. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. That's where Republicans win, is when you have an issue and you win on the issue itself, when you can make the argument about the issue. You can make the argument about how does it affect Dallas? How does it affect Texas? Democrats can't compete with that because their policy ultimately is not as successful as Republicans, especially when you're talking about the border.
Not on this.
So here's the thing. I'm gonna challenge you on that.
Yeah.
And here's why. There, at least when I was in school, studying poli-sci, a very basic election tenet was if the election's about national security, Republicans win.
Right.
If the election is about the economy, Democrats win. Because, and this was the thought, on national security, the Republicans' position, at least in the dark ages when I was in college, was we're going to have the biggest, baddest military in the world, and if anybody crosses us, we're going to blow them up.
Yeah.
And the Democrats were full of Al Gore's, like, well, we're going to talk to them, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to pull some cash out of the lockbox and take them to lunch. Like, it was that sort of stuff. So for the American public, like, understanding the complexities of, like, diplomacy and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And this is, in my opinion, this was the thought. That's harder to sell. It's easier to sell, I've got the biggest stick in the world. On the flip side, for the economy, it used to be, for the Democrats, easier because their message was always, oh, well, we're going to tax from the rich people. We're going to take the rich people's money and we're going to give it to you.
Right.
Is life hard right now? We're going to take rich people's money and we're going to give it to you. Versus
Right.
the Republican message is, okay, well, if we lower taxes, the Laffer curve says that this is going to happen. And then if these businesses are going to be more successful and profitable, then it's a more complex thing to explain.
Sure.
And so I kind of think right now, one of the things that the Republicans are starting to win on is a lot of our arguments are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Hey, we should not allow children to have life-altering gender surgeries performed on them or chemical castrations done.
Right.
That's a pretty simple thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, the people that are in this country illegally that are committing crimes, we should send them back home.
Right.
Hey, inflation's going crazy because y'all won't let us develop energy here in the U.S. Would you like cheaper gas? Because we can do that if you want.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of that is just message simplicity.
That's true. And I think the best message simplicity, especially relating to policy, can be simple. I think you can have strong policy that is simple in nature. Like, a prime example is the transgender argument, where Democrats and liberals come at it from the perspective of, well, don't you want everybody to feel good? Don't you want everybody to be happy? And then there's a lot of people that will say, yeah, I don't want people to be sad. I don't want people to feel unwelcome, all that stuff. And, they may agree with that. But when you talk to them and say, well, hey, do you want your 16-year-old daughter playing against a 16-year-old biological male in soccer? Then, it gets a little bit different for the same voter. And so the policy itself can be, we don't want that to happen. We want to protect your kids. That can be the extent of the policy. I mean, we don't have to get into the granularity of excise taxes and tariffs and all that. But what I do think that is important is we need to be able to have Democrats define what their actual platform is, because it's so extreme, it's so crazy, it's so ludicrous. Like, if we say we are the party of common sense, if we look at them and say, hey, look, I mean, this is crazy, this is wild, then we win.
To stick on,
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, to stick on the trans issue, not to speak over you.
Yeah, no.
Matt Walsh, easy question. What is a woman?
Yeah.
Right? Pose that question to some of the folks on the left, especially the elected ones. Yeah. Hey, what is a woman? How do you define a woman?
Yeah.
And they immediately refuse to give you an answer. Right? I'm not a doctor. I can't say that, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. How many genders are there?
Again, simplicity of message.
Yeah.
You all can't define what a woman is? That's insane. And that's not just insane for Republicans. That's insane from like a regular, everyday person.
Absolutely. And I think the proof is in the pudding this past election cycle. You had what was, the most popular ad the Trump campaign ran. Kamala is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you.
Yeah.
And that is an incredibly effective messaging tactic. It actually, at least a little bit, talks about policy. And of course, the ads, got more into the specifics. But the message there is very simple. It's very effective. And it's one of these examples where broad brushstrokes, maybe 10 years ago, people might have said, oh, well, we want people to be happy. Well, here's the policy, and we don't like it. And so that's how you get Trump in 24. I think that's a very, very strong argument to make. Is it can be a simple policy, but just to get down to brass tacks and say, what is actually behind this? Look past the crying, look past, whatever somebody might say. What actually is the policy? What's the message here? So that's some place where Republicans have won in the past. I think that is a successful argument. And, if we want to continue to be successful, we'll do it in the future.
Kyle, any messaging thoughts?
I think the messaging has been really good, not just from an administrative point of view, but I think that the right in general has flooded the zone on social media with putting out really great content, podcasts, memes, just filling the space. The left can't meme. I think we've really, really taken advantage. I mean, they can't land a joke.
They can't meme about politics.
Very true.
They can't meme about politics or just current events. Like current events, they are absolutely terrible at memeing. And it's kind of this weird thing where, kind of like what you were saying, like our message was simple. Well, I was thinking back in the 90s and stuff, we were all like Republicans were nerds essentially. And they would, talk about the rising water floats all ships, and they start talking about bell curves and tax rates and all this stuff, and it's just like, dude, people turn that off after 3 seconds, right? And that's not really the conversations we get into. We've gotten really good at the social wars, right? The culture wars rather, and we've just kind of taken that space, and it's kind of. I don't know, this kind of happened maybe 5 years ago, but it's kind of cool to be on the right again, and it's kind of I just remember in middle school and high school, back then it was cool to be Democrat, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Being a Republican was where's your pocket protector?
Well, being conservative is countercultural now.
Yeah. Right.
The culture has gotten so liberal, so left. The stuff that happens, I legitimately... did y'all ever read the Christian Science Monitor?
No.
Right. So when I was in high school, like that was a pretty decent sized publication because the Christian movement within Republican politics back then was so strong coming out of Reagan that like, yeah, Republicans were very not part of the mainstream culture. They abandoned it. Right. Like, and then the left came in and took it over like crazy. And then once that happened, then all of a sudden that's what the norm becomes, right? That's what everybody's doing. And so then it switches back the other way where, oh, well, now being red pilled is the cool thing, right? It's the stuff that might get you in trouble with your teacher.
Yeah.
It's like there was some school, I've seen the video about it so many times, where they were trying to have like a LGBTQIA plus day of celebration, and all the kids were encouraged to wear rainbows.
Right.
And what the kids do? They showed up wearing black and white or red, white, and blue.
Right.
And just totally went against it because that's what kids do.
Right.
Like, that's just inherently what's in them if you allow them to think critically and you haven't brainwashed them to death.
But at the same time, they're not after your kids, guys. They're not.
Right. Not at all.
They're not
at
after your kids.
Well, another thing on messaging, and Kyle, you hit the nail on the head in my opinion, is I think that TV commercials and radio ads and stuff in the mail is dead.
Yeah.
I think if you want to reach people now, you've got to have it. You've got to be reaching them on social media. You've got to be on Facebook or Instagram or whatever Chinese spyware will be used by Gen Z or Gen Alpha, whatever.
Those people that signed up for Redbook or whatever,
right.
like immediately
Insane.
Fucking losers.
Well, I'm just saying, like, hey, mark that for your bleeping.
Put the timestamp right now.
Kid friendly. So this is, you have to be in that space. Like, this is where a lot, like Trump would not, I don't think Trump wins if he doesn't have the following he has on Twitter or X.
No.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like that's the space that you have to be succeeding in. And if you're still trying to figure out the right layout for your mailer card, then...
Yep. We got a lot.
I'm going to tell you, my grandma doesn't even look at that stuff anymore.
No. I mean, I look at it because I'm interested in it. And I want to see, and I hold it and I think, God, my representative just wasted a bunch of money.
Yeah. When's the last time you were persuaded politically by something you received in the mail?
Not a single time in my life, and I'm very, very much doubt that it sways many people nowadays. I mean, it's just like we have a lot of representatives that just spend money on nothing. Dude, just light it on fire. At least you see me warm from it.
The only thing that helps is with name rec. In local campaigns and, municipal elections, state house, obviously, we're very plugged into the state house races. But for by and large, a lot of people don't know who their representative is, don't know what party they're in, don't know anything about them. And, they might go to a ballot box, might be persuaded to go vote in a primary. And they're like, well, I've heard of Kyle Mason, but I haven't heard of Chris. So, there it is. And not saying that's exactly how it should go. But it's a very limited scope, and I totally agree with you both that social media, I think X in general, but social media really kind of calls the beat, and legacy media marches to it.
Yeah.
What you see on X, really, after 6 hours, 8 hours, the legacy media starts to pick it up. But at that point, people are already familiar with it.
Right.
And so, you have to know your audience. And you have to know where people are actually originating the news. It's happening on X.
Well, that's my thing about social media is like the algorithm can be your best political consultant.
Yeah.
Right? The algorithm knows what these people want to see. They know what they're searching for. If you're putting the right content out there as an elected official, as a party, as a PAC, as a candidate, the freaking algorithm will feed it to the people that want to see that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I just really, I think from a messaging standpoint, if you aren't, digital stuff for me is absolutely number one. It's the number one thing that you've got to be doing if you're messaging. All the other stuff, earned media obviously is best. If you're getting picked up and interviewed on some major network,
Sure,
that's great. But part of the reason that's great is because you can clip it and put it on your social media.
Absolutely.
That's probably where people are going to have the most views of it. And the whole thing about being on Fox or OAN or CNN or whatever it is just like the credibility of, oh, well, this is a serious enough person to be on the news.
Yeah. The ecosystem has definitely changed. I think there is a level of seriousness associated with your major, your Fox News of the world that will never go away. But I think that where the power is, where the engagement actually is on social media. That's where people are looking. And, I can't tell you, me personally, I'm getting a lot of my news from social media. Now I'm following legacy news sources on there, but the platform itself is driven by that algorithm. A lot of people, they're not picking up a newspaper. They're not going to the main webpage or, the Texas Tribune and scrolling up and down. So,
Right.
It's a different environment, even the one that we saw when, Trump ran the first time.
Well, it's just, yeah. I mean, the way to digest the content and stuff, like if you're a media source, it's so much easier for me to scroll through your page to pick up on stories
Yeah.
than it is for me to like actually pick the paper up and do all, the other sort of stuff. Like I still like having like something in my hands to read.
Me
I
too.
still like to read a book as opposed to like a Kindle or something like that. But when it comes to just like getting headlines out there and getting people's attention, that's just the best way. All right, we're back. Took a little bit of a break. We are about to start talking about the Texas legislature. And with that in mind, this is kind of the boys' cast tonight.
Yeah.
So we decided we'd have a little drink. Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers to a better conversation.
To a better conversation. And talking about the Texas legislature, because this should be a wild session.
Yes. Now, before we get started, I would like to, we've got to talk about immigration. We are cultured, and all these cups are from Japan. Okay? When I was stationed over there, the cup
Love
that
that.
you have is actually really cool. I might butcher this story, but I got it from a shrine, and all those are the names of these samurai that betrayed their master, and then they all committed suicide together and shame for betraying their master. Anyways, they're all buried together in a cemetery, and there's a shrine there. And so it's like when people say the master's name, it's like a sign of respect, like you mean this to me. You mean as much as that guy to me. Anyways, it's a really cool cup, and
I promise, cross my heart, I did not pick this cup with any sort of Dustin Burrows supporter logic. I know that right now there's got to be somebody out there that's just like, betrayal. I know a little bit about betrayal with the Texas legislature. Not what we're getting at. Fun fact, I think it's called seppuku, right? When like the ritualistic suicide stuff.
yeah.
I liked the movie The Last Samurai, so that's my connection with the cup. Actually,
That's a good movie.
I love the Bushido Code. I don't know if either one of you read the Bushido Code.
Haven't read it.
So the Bushido was like the philosophy of the samurai, like how they lived their lives, and they were like their values. It's really, really interesting.
Sure.
It comes remarkably close to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Not entirely the same, but I've always just thought it's fascinating that when you get to like the core of a good value set, as an argument for there being a creator, there's often a lot of common values.
Sure.
Speaking of common values, let's talk about passing some legislation in Austin.
Let's do it.
So, I guess first and foremost, I don't know about you guys. I don't really care about talking about the Texas rules all that much, or the chair, vice chair thing. And we somewhat discussed it. Kyle, do you have thoughts? Do you have hot sports opinions on this?
My biggest takeaway from this whole thing is I'm just utterly confused, because we saw the whole Cooksboro thing, and it was like, oh my gosh, now the everyone was clutching their pearls. Now the Democrats are going to run the legislature, and now it's like, well, not really.
Yeah.
Like, not really. And now I'm confused about, okay, what deal was made? What are they getting out of all this? You know? Or did they get something already I haven't seen? Or I guess it's to be seen.
Who's the they? The Democrats?
The Democrats that voted,
The Democrats did not want the Tim Dunn-backed Republicans in power.
Okay.
That was it.
That's what they got.
That's what they got.
I thought for sure I would have put money on it that they were going to get some seats, head of the committee somewhere on something.
Well, you have what I think has been aptly described as the outrage machine, trying to convince people that there being Democrat vice chairs is the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
But
which I never bought.
Here's the thing. I think from what I've heard about the rules, the only thing that I don't like is that the speaker gets to pick all the members of all the committees. I am a firm believer that you appoint the committee chair, and then the committee chair should be able to select the people on his or her committee.
I like that process better too.
It's a lot of power in one spot.
Agreed.
Not
Yes.
very, constitutional republicish.
Yeah, I think that you let the committee chair pick the people on the committee.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I have no problem with vice chairs. As a matter of fact, I kind of like how this worked out because I saw a fair amount of headlines talking about how bipartisan Dustin Burrows is as the Republican speaker. That's great PR for a general. I'd love to sit there and be able to say, hey, yeah, Republicans have total power in Austin. And we still give Democrats a voice down there because we represent all Texans and we respect that we are a representative state, a representative republic. Like, even the minority party has some voice.
Yeah.
Sure.
They may not have control, obviously, but they have some voice. I love that optic for Republicans overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great press, and I think one thing that's worth mentioning is that David Cook, obviously the candidate who also ran against Dustin Burrows, he supported the vice chair construct. So I think that confusion, Kyle, is definitely an apt word to use because for the longest time, the argument was really about are we going to allow Democrats to be committee chairs or not?
Right.
Well, we got our answer. They're not committee chairs. And so, then the argument shifts to the vice chair construct. And then, you're like, well, the person who was the carrying the mantle of the so-called opposition, of the people who were, perhaps opposed to Burrows' speakership, he himself supported the very construct that we have now. So
Right.
It does get a little bit nebulous. It gets a little bit confusing. I would say overall, seems like positive marks so far for the House, and it's early. There's been a lot of priorities released. There's been a lot of good things out of those priorities, a lot of things that I'm excited about. So, fingers crossed it'll be a good session. I hope that the House and Senate work together and we can get as much done as possible because got a lot to do.
Kyle, you look like you had a thought.
We do have a lot to do. I'm actually just particularly relieved that my feeds now on social media are kind of like less dramatic. I felt like for a couple days I was opening up my feed and it was like, oh my gosh, that we're going to become Chicago or something. Like the entire state is going to be just absolutely over. And I'm like, is something really happening that I should be worried about? And they've been much more quiet recently. And, it's like, hey, we found these rules about a mask you got to wear a mask in the legislature or something like that. I'm like, again, we're talking about these things are written by lawyers. And I know we have one on the couch, but like for someone like me, a knuckle dragger that's not educated, it's like, dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to, with my job and everything, to go in and bust out all these rules and find out what I don't like and then complain about it. I just have to trust that, a certain amount of people that I support and vote are going to, roughly be in line with my values. And sure enough, that's kind of what has happened. We don't have a perfect system, but damn, it's pretty dang good,
Absolutely. I mean, Texas, it always makes me just so happy to see how Texas operates as opposed to Washington, especially when they run concurrently like this. The efficiency that Texas gets problems done and just solved is unbelievably amazing compared to DC, where people are still arguing about whether or not they're not allowed to receive any sort of grant money, and it's just a clearly debunked story. They're arguing about it a day later. Texas has already released a full slate of policy proposals. It's good to be a Texan. It's good to be governed by a Republican legislature, and I think Dustin Burrows, one thing that about him is he's been a consistent Republican his entire time. in Austin, and I don't expect that to change. Holding the speakership gavel.
No, I can't imagine he'd do anything too wild.
I just go back to like, I'm tired of all the fake outrage.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the fact that people that want attention know that they can get it through getting people upset.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're going to do. You have certain media sources in Texas that you go read their headlines and everything is something to try to fire people up. It's not just a neutral, hey, I'm telling the news sort of thing. I'm just tired of that stuff. It makes me.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There was a story today that broke that from a certain news source here in Texas that was, oh my God, Dustin Burrows let Democrats write the rules. Dustin Burrows had a Democrat write the rules.
Oh yeah.
So that's technically true in that the person that wrote the draft votes Democrat, but it wasn't a Democrat representative. It was literally the Texas House parliamentarian who is also on the faculty at UT Law and is an expert in legislative rules.
Right.
So what Dustin Burrows did is probably had one of the most qualified people in the whole state who happened to be the parliamentarian in the House prepare the draft of the rules.
Yeah.
And you have some media sources trying to get people angry by making it seem as though Dustin Burrows turned that over to some sort of group of Democrat legislatures to craft for him or something like that.
He turned it over to Act Blue.
Right.
Just like immediately was like, here you guys go.
Kamala's got free time, so she wrote the House rules.
Once she finished grocery shopping, she went right down to Austin and started drafting the Texas House rules.
And that's
You heard
just
it here first.
that just frustrates me because that's a matter of like people that are trying to inform themselves. They're trying to learn about what's going on. Get distracted.
It's tough.
Get pissed off for no reason.
Yeah.
They sit there and end up thinking like there's a lot of people that are good Republicans, people that I hold very dearly, that truly despise Morgan Meyer and Angie Chin Button here in Dallas County.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to say you disagree with them, you disagree with how they vote this, that, or the other, but the way that some people act about them is it's inhuman.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Like, why do we have news sources and media sources trying to make people act that way?
No, it's insane, and especially because I know personally, Representative Meyer has been just an unbelievable advocate for any Republican group that I've been a part of. I mean, he's a strong partner, and so, the question is always, would you rather have a Democrat in the seat? I think that people tend to forget that there's nuance, there's differences in different House seats, and so, you have to understand the district that you're in. They're a representative of the people and of the district, and it's pretty remarkable that you're running, what was it, 108's, Biden plus what, 15 district or something like that?
No. It's like a Trump plus like 1%.
Now, but before redistricting, it was a Biden.
Yes,
it was a Biden district, and he still won it. He won it by, I want to say, a point or two. So he ran about, I want to say 7 or 8 points.
Well,
fact check me later.
His opponents wouldn't be surprised at that at all. He's a Democrat. Morgan Miles is a Democrat. Of course, he's going to win a Biden district.
I'm saying he's voting with Republicans, so it's
I'm tongue in cheek with that.
No, so it's interesting, but I think it's cool in the House to have a variety of viewpoints, a variety of policy opinions. They don't have to be all unified, and quite honestly, it would be a little freaky if everybody's policy orientation was exactly the same on every single issue.
I think they used to have that in the Soviet Union a lot.
Yes.
Right? You'd show up to the Kremlin, and everybody was like, "Yeah, whatever Stalin said, we're going to do that."
Yeah. So glad we don't have that here. Glad we have some difference in opinion. We're all Republicans at the end of the day, and I think it's going to be a good session.
As far as bills go, this is just random looking to the future. And of course, we might not even have the bill name, but what do you think the most bipartisan bill is going to be this year?
The most bipartisan?
Right.
Ooh.
My argument would be probably water rights. There's actually been a lot of discussion about water, more so than I actually thought initially. I think it's something that affects really everybody across the state. You see Austin in particular has a significant problem with their lakes and reservoirs, and it's gotten a little bit better recently because you've seen a lot of precipitation over the past couple of months here. But I think water rights is a huge thing. That's something where Texas is negotiating as a state entity. There's funding there, so that's something that Speaker Burrows mentioned in his introductory speech on the floor. So I think that's something that I could see being bipartisan, but you never know how it's going to shake out. My vote would be for water.
I think they'll probably recognize some local high school sports teams for winning state championships.
True.
Yeah.
I forgot the loophole.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm going to say that's a blind spot for me because I'm very focused on a lot of the Republican priorities.
Yeah.
That I honestly haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about some of those issues that might be somewhat bipartisan. I think you're right. I think water would probably be one of them. But yeah, I honestly I don't know. That's a really good question.
Also, shouting out the South Lake Carroll football team on their inevitable title win.
Again, we're not bad. Yeah,
we'll see. But I think that could be a winner as well.
Like all I know is that the Callisburg girls golf team is going to win district again. Got a good chance at regionals. Randy Romines built a dynasty there. If you wouldn't mind clipping that, I'll send it to Coach Romines.
Sounds good.
I needed Coach Romines at Callisburg because when he wasn't the golf coach, I got thrown off the golf team.
That's like out by Decatur, right? Callisburg?
Callisburg is up like between Gainesville and Sherman.
Okay. I recruited out of that high school.
Callisburg?
I know the name, I just don't know the location, but yeah.
After I took the ASVAB, I was asked to be an engineer on a nuclear submarine.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm 6'4".
Plenty of room. No, there's plenty of room, especially on the big boys.
Okay.
On the big ones. Yeah,
this is the recruiter talking right now.
This is you be good.
Yeah.
You'll be good. Sign here. Get that 4-day weekend.
Yeah. Foreign women love American men.
Yeah, it's like bad news for you. That thing don't port.
Rock flagging country. Let's do this thing.
It's like, yeah, the big one never ports. Sorry, bud, I didn't tell you that. And most countries don't let them port there either.
Mermaids are real.
Yeah.
You'll learn that in the Navy.
I don't know actually about the mermaid thing, but okay.
See, this is a conspiracy theory. I don't believe him. I think, he spent a lot of time underwater.
He sounded like my brother-in-law now.
He has definitely seen mermaids.
Release the files.
He's probably seen some UWOs. What is it? Unidentified USOs, whatever it would be.
Okay, I will say this, and they talk about this in Congress. A lot of those pictures that you see of UFOs are taken by submarines off the periscope. Like, they have very good, periscopes with cameras on them and everything. Like, a lot of those random things that they see coming in and out of the water are taken by submarines that are tracking objects, and they're like, what the f*** is that?
Did y'all see the trailer that dropped yesterday? I forget the name of it. I'm going to pull it up here. Let's see.
No. Hold on a second. We don't need to get copyrighted.
Okay, I won't show it, but it was crazy.
I don't really track UFOs too much because I'm just kind of like, look, if they're here, good. I'm glad that they're not,
bothering me right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe they're just here on vacation, sightseeing. That's fine. But
I think that's an age difference because my generation, lots of abduction. Like, aliens were heavily associated with abduction. I'm not going to lie to you. Going to sleep as a young man in New Mexico.
Oh yeah, you were from New Mexico.
Definitely, I was definitely getting geared up to fight some aliens at night. Like, if they come in this room, I'm going down swinging. I'm not going up on the ship.
Yeah.
And I'm talking like, even now when I go visit my grandma in New Mexico, I'm still ready to stomp aliens. But I don't feel like for y'all's generation, the abduction stories were quite as big.
No. It kind of died off. I mean, I did think that like aliens and quicksand was going to be a huge issue.
Absolutely. And the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
Come on now.
But no, never really panned out for me. Here's a question.
Yep.
What do you think that the Republican Party is going to stub their toe on the most this session?
Kyle, what does that have to do with aliens?
I just wanted to get away from aliens.
tangent. Okay. If you want to go on a tangent on the podcast, we can stop talking about aliens.
It's interesting. I still think we need to release the Kyle Mason documentary. I feel like there's some more here that he's trying to get off of.
There's a report.
There
There's a report
absolutely is.
somewhere. He really tried to sidestep the mermaids. So what do I think that the Republican Party is going to stub their toe on? Property taxes.
Okay.
It to me, like, the M&O stuff is going to be such a slam dunk, or it should be such a slam dunk. What I mean by the M&O is maintenance and operation taxes for school districts are something that local taxpayers pay for.
Yep.
And what the legislator did in 2023 is use some of the budget surplus to pay M&O expenses around the state to pay down those taxes. The push now is to essentially start eliminating the M&O tax to where it just becomes a budget line item for the state government. So just permanently move some of that surplus into paying maintenance and operations for the schools.
Yeah.
It's such an easy win, but there are certain folks within the Republican Party that they only want to focus on homestead stuff. That I really worry that that's such a layup that we're going to stub our toe on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I follow this stuff kind of, and I still haven't heard like a good pitch on it. And I think the biggest, and now I'm speaking like as if I was kind of like Democrat, Texan, pro-teacher union type, be like, well, I'm worried about the state taking over the M&O because they're just going to take it. They're going to take control of it, but then not give us what we need. And from that point of view, I can see their point of view, because right now it's the money is being leveraged, not the M&O, but other money is being leveraged for, Republican priorities. So I just wonder I'm actually curious how they're actually going to do this, because I think that, man, Texans really do need a huge tax cut, and that would be a great one. Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's the biggest. It's like the biggest field goal that you can get. Like, it's great, but you can miss it so easy by getting stuck in the weeds on a lot of dumb things.
It's the Charlie Brown and Lucy analogy with the football.
Yep.
Running right up, gonna pull it out at the last second.
Yes.
See how it goes. I might take it in a little bit of a different direction. I think the issue that Republicans might get the most caught up on is not necessarily a policy proposal as much as it is procedure. I think last session, Democrats were very effective at using parliamentary point of orders, as a way to stop and slow down legislation. I don't know if we fully, as a party, have prepared for that. Maybe we have, and maybe I'm not just been privy to those conversations, obviously, but I do think that when you take away committee chairmanships, and not saying that's the wrong thing, because quite frankly, I think, based on their past conduct, it's very understandable, but you really only have one check for Democrats who want to slow down Republican legislation, and that's objecting to the procedure, point of order challenge. So I think you're going to see a lot of them. I think maybe even if there's a 50% hit rate on them, it's going to be very, very difficult to get Republican procedures and policies through. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be watching.
Well, part of that, and for me, on that point, and I was actually having this conversation with folks earlier today, is how poorly a lot of the legislation gets drafted for Republican issues. We don't do a very good job of drafting the bills in a way that, one, would survive these points of order,
Right.
or two, don't cause some of these issues. Going to use this as a general example. One of our legislative priorities as Republicans is that Texas is not for sale. We want to end hostile enemy nations from purchasing land in Texas. But does that mean that we want to prevent a Russian green card holder from being able to buy a house?
No.
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 And that's the sort of stuff that we have bills that get drafted poorly that would loop that in. There is a pretty big, and I'm going to call them a Persian population in Dallas, of Iranians that fled the current regime,
Right.
and came here to the U.S. Kyle, just go ahead and make the pour, This is the back half of the A Better Conversation. You don't have to stand on.
You saw what I was going for?
Oh, I saw it. I saw it immediately.
All right, sorry.
I saw the look.
I didn't want to interrupt your.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is don't stand on ceremony.
Okay.
And I say that mostly
after
because I wouldn't mind a little top up as well. All that alien talk got me going.
I know.
Yeah.
We're ready now.
But yeah, there's a big Iranian population. Shout out to my boy Nathan, who told me about this. Nathan Moyad, great lawyer.
Yeah.
If you were to have, obviously we don't want Iran or any of its proxies to be able to come out here to the U.S. and buy up farmland.
Sure.
But we also want those Iranian expats that fled the current regime and sought democracy to be able to come here and buy a house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Some of the few people that actually have an asylum case.
right. Exactly. and that's the point, is like, you don't want to draft the legislation in such a way that inhibits those people. But a lot of times we end up drafting things in such a vague way because it's more important to get a bill on file to appease the base than it is to make sure that we get those pesky lawyers involved and actually draft a piece of legislation that's going to work.
Yeah, sometimes, and I think about this when I see national stuff come out too. It's like, it's almost like some congressman or some representative did this in secret and then just like threw it in the stack. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, did you even run it by anyone? I mean, is there not like a murder board process to this? Like, hey, you got to get 9 other people to ominous dominus this thing and say, hey, yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Not necessarily like a full endorsement, but like an internal party check of some type. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like if you're at, I don't know, like if I'm at work and I want to go purchase something, or if I'm thinking about pulling the trigger on this investment, like I can't just be like, hey, yeah, I think that's a great deal. Like you got to go get other people to think, hey man, like what do you think about this deal? Like, hey, I think that's a disaster. Don't touch it. But like, sometimes things just pop up. I'll take it nationally real quick. There was the representative from Tennessee who randomly dropped a bill to give Trump a 3rd term. Yeah. And that was like the headline for the day. And I'm like, I guess Republicans just want to lose. Like, I guess we just can't. It's like, hey, it's a good day. The sun is shining. Let me do a rain dance so we can have some downpours or something. Like, it's just impossible for them just to win, Well, because you've got a lot of people that are elected to office. Sure.
That care more about being elected to office than they do crafting laws that benefit society.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, they would rather file the thing.
Yep.
That's going to get them a headline.
Mm-hmm.
That random representative in Tennessee, who you can't already remember his name.
Yep.
That was his probably best chance to ever be known or remembered. Yeah. Is to have that bill that goes through, and he knows he's going to have a certain part of the Trump universe that's going to love him forever for that.
And that's all it was too. It was like, dude, that's going absolutely nowhere, and now it just goes into feed into this narrative that Trump is a dictator and he's pulling out all the stops, and it's just like, damn, bro, did you really have to do that?
Yeah.
And what are the repercussions?
Well, it's just like
probably raise money.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you denying that mermaids exist. The Navy's going to be happy that you did that. It's not in pursuit of truth, but the Navy's going to be happy you're covering that up.
Exactly.
Oh,
it's more theory over procedure. It's very difficult. I think part of that too is the committee process. In theory, would be the vetting, and especially in Texas or another state that's majority Republican. It's not entirely just a Republican vetting, but it is a majority Republican. And that's where a lot of these points of orders come up, is in committee. They'll shoot down the bill. It'll be halfway through the legislative session. It's only 180 days in Texas, once every 2 years. So then, by the time it gets back on the floor, there's no way they're seeing it for another 2 years. So that is where a lot of it gets shut down. I think there are organizations out there that do a good job of pooling resources, legal resources, really, to get bills onto state house and state legislature floors more effectively. The American Legislative Exchange Council is one that comes to mind, ALEC. They're great, and so that's a resource that I think everybody should leverage, and obviously I'm sure people do, but it's the more organized that you can get on that kind of stuff, the less likely that we're going to see Republicans stumble. So I'm optimistic, but I hope that that's kind of the way that we take it.
I'm glad that you brought up committees.
Yeah.
I would like for you, look, there are probably people that are watching that are asking themselves rationally, why do we have all these committees and why do they matter? Why can't you just take a bill, file it, everybody read it, we argue it on the floor, and we vote on it?
Yeah.
Would you mind talking to our audience a little bit about the whole purpose of having these committees that work in Washington, Austin, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm assuming you're talking about subcommittees and legislature, right?
Right.
Yes. So, I think really they kind of serve a couple important purposes. One is really they're a traffic cop at the highest level, because if every single bill that a legislator proposed came to the floor, then you would have a full-on hearing of the Trump third term bill. For example, you would have to sit there and vote on it, and if there was somebody who wanted a specific recorded vote on that, so not just a voice vote, but somebody who actually wanted to go in and lodge each and every vote individually,
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, then that's something that would happen. So it would absolutely just kind of grind the legislature to a halt, first of all. But more than that, they're really meant to serve as subject matter experts on different policies and policy areas. So, for example, you have Ways and Means. They deal with budgetary and finance and all that. But then you have education. You have all sorts of different items where the legislator that's supposed to be put on that committee is supposed to have some level of advanced understanding of the bills that they're looking to regulate or deregulate in a lot of senses. So there's a level of advising and consenting in a committee that wouldn't necessarily be there if you were just to throw everything on the floor. There's that. And then also, it provides a level of only allowing the bills that are most deserving for Texans or for Americans to actually get on the floor to be enacted. It's another level of protection, really, against government overreach. And so there's a whole lot more, but I think that kind of covers the three general things. A lot of work's done in committees, and kind of gets to the theme of the most work gets done at the local and state level.
My favorite thing about committees is the ability for regular citizens to go testify.
Sure.
Right? The fact that you can sign up and go say your piece in front of the committee on whatever issue, whatever bill, whatever they're considering, to me is the thing that actually, that's where you allow Texans to quite literally go have their voice in Austin. If everything went to the floor without committees, that would be impossible.
Right.
Okay. So we talked about stumbling blocks. What are the things that you are most looking forward to? What sort of, it doesn't have to, you don't need to be like, oh, I'm really stoked about HB 1170 or whatever. And I
Did not know you were a nerd.
1170 is my precinct. What is it that you're looking forward to from this upcoming legislative session in Texas?
Yeah, there obviously are a host of different policy positions. I would say one thing that is on the top of everybody's mind is school choice. Yeah. I'm incredibly excited about that. I think this is the best opportunity that the Texas legislature has ever had to pass a comprehensive school choice initiative. And of course, it's not going to be everybody all at once, but it is going to be a truly well-funded, adequately funded program to enact that and move school choice out further. I'm a big proponent in charter schools. I'm a big proponent in being able to choose your school. So this is exciting for me. And also, I would say in a more general theme as well, I do think despite the Republican infighting that you had in the House, now that Speaker Burrows has been selected, I've seen even Lieutenant Governor Patrick, there's been a fair amount of coordination there. You've seen, for example, school choice, we're just talking about it, the figures that the Senate and the House released for school choice, they were both billion-dollar figures. That is probably one of the most important indicators that the House and the Senate are marching kind of on the same beat. And I'm sure Governor Abbott has a hand in that, but you're seeing a unified House, or about as unified as you can get, House, Senate, and governorship. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I think past couple sessions you haven't necessarily seen that, maybe some spurts of it, but overall not so much. So we'll see how that goes. I'm curious to see where it all leads.
Well, I mean, school choice being SB2,
Yep.
right? Like,
Yeah.
the lower the number, usually the higher priority.
Absolutely.
So the fact that that was reserved and that's what they got shows that the Senate's serious about it. So, but let's talk a little bit about school choice. Before we do that, interested, what sort of school did you go to? Like, Kyle, where did you go to school growing up?
I went to LISD, really great school, blue ribbon school,
Where'd you, in Louisville?
in Flower Mound.
Okay. Okay, so you were going to be a Marauder?
Yes, I'm a Marcus Marauder.
Oh, you are a Marcus Marauder.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I think they're called the Red. I think they're called Red Storm now, or maybe they changed it back. But they try to pick a couple different names during the whole. This is actually pre-woke.
Wow.
Yeah.
People started like, oh, Marauder, we can't be Marauders. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I kind of get it. But yes, I'm a Marcus Marauder.
Wow. I went to public elementary school, public middle school, and then private high school and
Okay.
private college. So kind of a little bit of both.
I went to a lot of schools. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I went to 2 elementary schools, 3 elementary schools, and 2 high schools, or 2 middle schools, including 1 year of homeschool,
Wow.
and then rural public high school.
Seen it all.
I've seen a lot of things. I would have been a fighting farmer. I went to Lakeland Middle School for a year, and for half a semester I went to Lakeland Elementary, DeLay Middle School.
Okay, I know where the middle school is.
Yeah. So we would have been rivals.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been rivals because I'm significantly older than you, but we would have been rival alumnus.
We would have never been rivals because I didn't give a shit about any of that.
So the reason I ask is obviously, with school choice, one of the big splits are where your schools are, right?
Sure.
So your small rural schools are said to be very against school choice. I will say it was my experience in 2 small rural schools in Texas that made me greatly in favor of school choice. Like I'm proud to have been a Ponder Lion, proud to be a Kalispberg Wildcat, but if we had a choice, I would have at least liked my family to have had a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
For a different type of school to go to. For us, we didn't have any money. I was living in a trailer on a dirt road. Like,
Sure.
we didn't have going to private school kind of cash. So we didn't have private schools in the area that really had like scholarship programs or stuff.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to have been able to if there are more opportunities somewhere to check those out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like out in Kalispberg, I don't know how that would work. I mean, I guess any church could say, hey, we got a classroom.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, the choice would be cool. And I think the biggest probably thing, one of the bigger issues that the Republicans have right now is that they don't really, like, for instance, Kalispberg. I think that they can make the case of like, look, the school choice thing probably isn't going to happen out there. You got just enough to kind of keep that thing going. It's not really like you're going to lose half the students to a local religious institution.
Right.
You know?
But you're going to have, I mean, look, Kalispberg
Some.
drops, it goes from a 2A to a 1A.
Yeah.
It's not like you're no longer having a school exist.
Sure.
There's still going to be, Kalispberg Elementary, Middle, and High School. It's just, maybe St. Mary's in Gainesville is able to start a school.
Is able to start school,
Or I mean, there were some private schools or things along those lines that you could have gone to, you could have moved to. But even going out of district, right? Okay, well, let's say I want to go out of district to another instead of going to, maybe I want to go to Gainesville.
Yeah.
You know, okay, I want to move my money from going to this district to Gainesville or go to Whitesboro or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there were school choice options if you could move around. As it is now,
You always got the choice if you got the money.
that's the problem, right?
Choice. Everyone has school choice at this very moment if you have the money.
And that's the reason I'm in favor of school choice.
Me too.
The state
Me too.
level.
Yeah, me
It's because
too.
I just inherently, I want an education system that is designed to best educate the students.
We sound like lefties right now.
No.
Yes.
I'm a
No, we're
Republican.
taking this argument from the left. Only the rich have the ability to move around and move their money and buy what they want. We are trying to bring this back to the people. We want to give them the choice.
Yeah, but the left wants that.
Wants what?
They want people locked into the schools they're in.
I know.
Like we're that's the thing. Like that's the messaging of it, right? I mean, the thing that people forget is the left is more interested in protecting the teachers union,
Right.
than
In
they
this,
are
in
promoting
this
quality
situation.
education.
In this situation.
I would
yes.
just say in general.
Sure.
I mean, look, if you start looking at some of the school districts around the country
Yeah.
that spend the most per capita per student,
Yep.
and
Chicago
just
ISD.
have
Yep.
trash results.
Absolutely
Just
terrible.
garbage results.
Terrible. Yeah.
It's not because they're not spending enough money on the kids.
Nope.
They're spending plenty of money.
Nope.
The problem is that they're more concerned with appeasing the teachers union and whatever loony set of trustees they have at the time than they are actually at educating the kids. This goes back to the Republican common sense notion.
Absolutely. And follow the money, too. I mean, the teachers' unions are the strongest advocates for Democratic candidates. You know, I think something that we really should emphasize and have, but we should be continuing to emphasize, is the fact that it's school choice. It's not school requirement that you have to go and up your entire education system. It is the fact that you have a choice. You have a choice to, if you want to, explore other options. And schools that are performing and are deserving of our children's education, they will be the ones that remain. Mm-hmm. They will be the ones that say, you know, we're going to continue to educate. We're going to be continuing to receive money from the state because we're creating a good product. And that's rural, urban, suburban. It's across the board. So, you know, you can choose to stay exactly where you are.
Yeah.
You can choose to go elsewhere. So that's the message that I think is lost when teachers unions will come in and say, oh, this is going to decimate X, Y, and Z. No, it won't. It will decimate the ones who are inadequately preparing their kids for the next level. And, you know, we need a new education system. Every kid deserves to be educated the best they possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's been a huge economic drain, kind of like an internal brain drain, if you will, on the United States of America, with essentially our school systems now becoming holding cells for certain communities where they're going in from 8 in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, extended schools care and everything like that. And you look at some of these high schools and they look like jails essentially, right?
They act like jails.
And they act like jails. They're not learning anything. Kids are coming out of there more violent, more in depth with illegal activities, and they're not learning anything. And really, the only way to break, again, might eat into a little bit of the leftist argument here, but like the kids do become a product of their environment, where they are. Gangs will try to recruit young impressionable men, right? The only way to get them out of that cycle is to give the parents the option of, look, and their parents might not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but they know if they go to that school, this is what's going to happen. If you give them other options, like a religious institution, for instance, that may be able to set up a Monday through Friday, you stay here type situation, give them the breakout of the really bad schools in these major cities, you could see a generational change pretty quickly. I mean, I guess that's kind of like the ultimate, daydream of the school choice.
That's actually the thing that I have the most enthusiasm about school choice.
Yeah.
is changing the paradigm of how parents think about educating their kids.
Absolutely.
It's a matter like right now, it's almost institutional capture, right? Like parents don't even think about how their kids are educated. And I don't mean this in any sort of derogatory way. Like I said, I come from a family of public educators. My granddad was a lifelong teacher and coach.
Sure.
Right.
My grandmother was a lifelong administrator within the school district. My mom is currently an elementary school teacher. She left a career in accounting at 59 years old to go into public education and to go work with elementary school kids. Wow. But you have a lot of parents that don't think about educating their kids. They think about, oh, well, my kid's just going to go to this school because this is where we live.
That's where you live, yep.
And during COVID, I think so many parents were exposed to how poorly their schools were functioning, how little their children were actually learning.
Right.
And I want, from a school choice standpoint, to at the beginning of every year, when school ends in May or June, the parents are already looking at the next year. Yep. Here's your $10,000, whatever it is, $6,160, whatever the allotment is.
Gotta bump those numbers
How
up.
are you going to educate your son and or daughter next year?
Yeah.
And let the parents actually be involved in that choice and decide, you know what? This school really has let us down. Mm-hmm. You know, I gave this school a chance. It's let us down. I do want to check out this school that my church has. Yeah. You know, there was a
be huge.
It would be huge.
Yeah.
For parents to actually be that engaged and have that much power.
Just to have
right
the
now,
thought.
Well, parents don't have any power right now with their kids.
No, they're hostage to rent rates.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, rent is this much and I only make this much. I have to move to this zip code.
Yeah.
I have to go to this school. I have to have one of these, you know, not to say the teachers aren't trying, but they only can do so much with what they're giving as well. And if you have 30 kids, 20 kids, and all their parents are totally disconnected from the process, it's like you're only going to get so much buy-in.
Right.
It's school by force instead of school choice. It's the exact opposite.
That's what we should start calling it, school by force.
Yeah.
That goes back into the messaging of like, hey, look, if you don't, with the school choice thing, ultimately it's going to come down to, here's the default schools.
Sure.
You need to fill out a form to go to these different schools. And I think like what you're getting at is like parents see there's an issue. And of course, I think it will, you know, there'll be a certain percentage of parents that just like, hey, cool, just go to that school. But at the bare minimum, it's going to make the schools need to perform because the principals are going to get pressure from the superintendents and so on and so forth because they get paid by attendance.
Right.
And they're going to now have a customer relation service of like, hey, where's your kid? Like, hey, this is what we're providing. Hey, this is what we're doing. Hey, you know, come to the PTA. Like all these different things rather than, hey, this is a holding cell and you're welcome. So now mom and dad both can go to work and pay more taxes.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
You know?
I mean, schools might actually have to ask themselves, why are we losing so many students?
Sure.
Right? Or they're going to shut this middle school down because we don't have enough students.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I nothing against teachers. Like I said, my mother is literally a public school teacher, but I would love for schools to have to face that sort of analysis. That sort of like, we have to provide a quality enough education and a benefit enough for these parents to continue entrusting their kids with us and not, you know what, they have to send their kids here. So I'm definitely going to tell them about transgenderism.
Yeah.
Right?
Captive
they
audience.
have to send their kids here. So I'm definitely going to be telling them about my weird lifestyle. Right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't want that. I want parents to have more control. I want parents to have more authority, and I want parents to have more buy-in with their kids' education. And I think school choice is the best way to do that.
Yeah, and I also, so obviously I have many teachers in my family as well. On the reverse side, from the teacher point of view, I think it empowers the teacher in a different way.
Okay.
As far as, hey, these are the things that I need to make, like, the parents happier, the students happier.
They become the product.
They become the product. Yeah. So, for instance, like right now, the way that the system's set up is, hey, the school is allocated X amount of dollars. There's an argument whether it's enough or not, right? But if they can kind of get a system where it's like, hey, we have more money from the state because we're performing better, more people are coming here, I think it does incentivize the school to hire better people and to fire the people that are not performing.
Right.
There's a very big problem right now in the education system with, one, not finding enough talent, and because they don't pay what needs to kind of be, I mean, honestly, like, you know, before maybe 10 years ago, whatever date you want to put on it, I mean, being a teacher was like a solid move, right? Career-wise. But now it's kind of like, you know, it's like with all the drama, with the problems with the students, with problems with the parents, all these different issues, it's like, hey, I'm only getting, you know, Plano ISD is like roughly $65,000-$70,000 a year. It's like, with with all the problems and all the hours that you work and all the after hours times that teachers put in, because there's so many administrative staff tasking them with filling out all this paperwork that the parents don't even read. I can't even tell you all the reports that teachers have to fill out. That's a requirement that they have to perform. The parents don't know what they're reading, and they go, "Okay, cool, thanks," and then they throw it in the trash. Like, it's like you're asking them to do so much more, and it's like all of a sudden the summertime off is not enough, and most teachers are looking for summertime jobs.
Yeah, most teachers have to work another job because they can't afford to take that time off.
Yes.
You know, and so there's that. And it also encourages educational innovation, curriculum, things that aren't necessarily related to just the teachers themselves, but the product that you're teaching. I mean, you are more responsive to what the parents say and what the parents are interested in. And so, you know, and also you're able to provide that in a product, in a format that's actually interesting to kids. Right. You're looking for the best possible outcomes, because if you don't get it, they're going somewhere else. So that's an absolute, creating some sort of incentive structure that focuses on childhood attainment, not just pumping the people through. That's going to be the key, and this solid first step.
If you're going to sit there and say that educators are now focused on what's the best possible way for me to educate these kids, that's a huge win.
Massive.
But Kyle, to your point, administrative bloat in public education is disgusting.
It's been a lot.
It's so much.
It's so bad.
There's so much crap that teachers have to do at every level. It's a total waste of time. To your point, it takes them away from the actual mission of being a teacher. Yep. And here's why there's a bill I'm very excited about.
Okay, here we go.
Big shout out to Ben Baumgartner.
Okay.
Keep your eyes on HB 974.
HB 974.
Which is a piece of legislation that would cap the salaries of superintendents at what the governor's salary is.
Which is?
The governor of the state of Texas, his salary is $153,750.
Plano ISD superintendent's going to take a $300,000 pay cut.
I love it.
That's great.
I love it.
That's great.
Because this is I mean, first of all, a superintendent of a school should not be making more money than the governor. You cannot convince me that the superintendent's job is more difficult than the governor's job.
Yeah.
And if you're really a public servant, if you're in there for the kids, $153,000 is not a bad salary.
Well, the intention would be to not be a superintendent forever, right? You know,
perhaps, or again, $153,000 is a good salary.
It's a good life.
It's not a bad life.
It's a good life.
So if you're telling me that that's what the superintendent, if that has the effect of shrinking the administrative overhead that teachers have to face, I'm all for it. Yeah. I'm all for it because I just, there is so much money that is wasted at the administrative level with all of these, like, oh, I've got a PhD in education and
oh my gosh,
we need to hire these consultants and we need to do blah and blah. Like, Kyle, are you looking up how many superintendents are going to be taken in the shorts for this? Because I'm for, you know how many, there's so many superintendents who are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I just pulled up Plano ISD. I don't know what year this is. 2023, 372,000. Now look, she's over a lot of people, but that is a wild number.
That ain't governor. That's not governor of Texas big.
That's not. Yeah, it's not governor of Texas big. That's not. You're in charge of an armed forces big, right?
Yeah, you're approaching president's salary at that level.
Exactly. And then like number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like you're over 150,000 on all these people.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, okay, you're going to be able, if you offered 150,000, let's just say 150,000 this year, you're going to be able to find a good superintendent that cares about kids, cares about the teachers, going to find a good balance. We're not saying that, I'm not saying that the problem with schools right now or the superintendents, how much they're getting paid, but it does go to show it's like administrative bloat is outrageous. And it's like it seems like, and I'm sure there's charts that show it, every dollar we put in extra into the school system, 65 cents of it goes to some BS that's like that doesn't go to the student or the teacher in the classroom, and it makes teachers, and I'll just say young women because it's mostly women. They're excited about becoming a teacher. They're excited about teaching children. This is the asset of this country for the future is our children, right? They're excited about it. They get into it. I don't know how many women I know that were a teacher for 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what they got educated in. And then they dropped out and they're doing something else because they're like, dude, it's not about teaching anymore. It's about paperwork, dealing with the parents and their complaints, all the different knick-knack things that go into it. And it's like, dude, I have the summer off and I'm supposed to be off at 4 o'clock, but they're not.
No.
They're doing a bunch of other stuff. And it's all, even if you paid them more, it's not always about the money. Even if you paid them more, like you have to take this administrative burden off their back because that's not what their heart is there for.
Right. You're not paying them to navigate bureaucracy. You're really not. And the other thing is you have an administrator that's making $400,000 a year. They're going to find ways to justify the fact that they're being paid $400,000 a year. And a lot of that results in added paperwork, added steps, added procedures. That is a natural tendency of somebody who is very highly educated, no doubt, probably is very well qualified in his or her field, and they're going to want to implement as much as they possibly can. And that isn't exactly conducive with the education system at its best. At its best, you want to let teachers teach. You want to obviously have standards, but you want to let teachers teach and make sure that they're educated to the best of their abilities and not sitting there filling out paperwork and focusing on a bunch of things that ultimately don't matter. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the innovation that's going to come from an aligned legislature, school choice.
If you could save $1 million in administrative salaries off the top in Plano ISD, that could give each teacher almost $300 for spend in their classroom.
Yeah. And
goes a long way.
That's like, I know that sound like $300 per teacher sounds trivial until I don't know, every year at the start of the school year, my mom fills up an Amazon basket for us to buy stuff for her classroom.
They all buy stuff for their class. They're all bought because they just want their classroom to operate well because they care. And it's like we're not empowering the teachers and the students. It's becoming this, it's just becoming this kind of swamp. The same thing that we complain about Washington D.C. becoming. It has kind of morphed into this thing of like, administrative staff, union bloat, and then who's protecting that now that there's an opposition to the issue?
Here's the really smart thing about Ben Baumgartner's bill. It doesn't affect high school football coach salaries.
There we go.
Revenue generators, right?
Revenue generators. Exactly.
So, I mean, y'all have any other thought? I mean, we talked about school choice a fair amount. Are there any other pieces of legislation? I know there's lots of issues as Republicans that we care about.
Sure.
But is there any other, big block education or big block legislation or something that might be industry specific to you or anything like that that you're fired up about?
I'd be curious to see what they do on the housing industry. I know we both work tangentially in real estate and housing, and I'm going to be curious to see what sort of bills come out of that. It's a very, very difficult industry to effectively make change in. There's a lot of inputs, there's a lot of outputs. I think everybody agrees that housing costs are too expensive. I think everybody agrees that we need to change it. Not everybody agrees on how to do it. And I will be very curious to see how that plays out as well. I'm excited. I'm optimistic. We'll see how it goes.
So I'm glad that you brought that up because I actually have a question for both of you on that. One of the things that's starting to be pushed heavily, and I start hearing it being pushed from conservative circles, are increasing accessory dwelling units. So for those of you that aren't aware, an accessory dwelling unit is optimistically, in the most vanilla sense, building the small 1-bedroom house in the backyard for the mother-in-law to stay into, right? Practically, it's not used that way a whole lot, but that's been something that I've heard a lot of groups pushing. I'm interested with y'all's exposure in real estate, what your thoughts are all about that.
I can see it both ways, but what I do think is interesting is that ADUs, to your point, they can take a lot of different forms and fashions, and it's all regulated at the local level. It's local county ordinances, city ordinances that either allow them or don't.
So that's what they're trying to change.
And they're trying to change that,
Right.
which I think would be interesting because an ADU we actually have them in certain municipalities. Highland Park has ADUs. University Park has ADUs. So you have them in municipalities where you might not immediately expect them to be. In Dallas, how an ADU in Highland Park looks a lot different than an ADU in Lubbock. And so I'm interested to see how they square that because housing policy is ultimately a local issue. We can try to implement items at the state level, and I think it's important to do as much as you can, but I would be very curious to see what sort of broad scale impacts they can have. I would say as a whole, if they're done effectively and they're done correctly, they are a great resource. You see Austin home prices, they haven't necessarily dropped, but they've started rising by less, which increases affordability for people who are moving in. They implemented ADUs in addition to a whole host of other different, housing measures, and some of those I think as conservatives we might disagree. We might not support, but overall I think ADUs can be a useful resource, but it definitely depends on how they're implemented and the municipality that is implementing them, because the law is only as good as the municipality that enforces it.
See, this is why Colin's a smart guest, because he's been wanting to take a shot at Dustin Burrows the whole time, and instead of doing it by name, he just dogs on Lubbock,
Exactly. No.
Kyle, what do you think? What are your thoughts on ADUs?
I like them from a practicality standpoint. I think if you own the house and you have, let's say, enough parking, that's reasonable, I think that's great. I think we have an aging population, so a mother-in-law suite is going to definitely need to happen. Now, side effect that happens, let's say everyone has an ADU, you have a mother-in-law suite, mother-in-law sells single-family home and moves in with y'all to the mother-in-law suite. That's another unit that a new family can buy. that makes housing more affordable or rent rates drop because more rentals are available.
Yeah.
And I think both of those are so just more units available in the market in general will make housing more affordable.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to argue with both of you, just to make it interesting. Is that really how most ADUs are used, though? Like the concern that I hear raised about ADUs is not about mother-in-law moving in. Mm-hmm. It's about, well, that gets turned into an Airbnb, or that gets turned into a low-income rental, and instead of it being what you're describing, where mother-in-law moves in, her house is now another unit on the market. It's okay, we are now using this as a short-term rental type property.
Sure. There are certainly horror stories, I would say, with that. Again, local municipality rules, sometimes a lot of them will actually prohibit Airbnbs if you have an ADU law in place for that exact reason. And you're always going to hear the stories of the, person who comes in and throws parties 7 days a week or something like that. But there's a reason that they're called mother-in-law suites. I would say by and large, the use case is for something like that. Not all the time, and maybe not even, as much as we would ideally like. But I do think overall it's probably a net positive if it's done effectively and correctly. That's always the key. But I think ultimately Texas is growing, Dallas is growing. We're going to have some sort of solution, because if not, what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of 30-year-olds who are ready to settle down, ready to buy a house, and they're not going to be looking in Dallas. They're going to be turning around. They're going to be looking in Plano. They're going to be looking in Frisco. They're going to be looking outside of the city limits because it's way cheaper and you have a lot of other benefits. So Dallas really needs to decide, in the legislature, there's a part of that too. But if you're looking at it from a municipality perspective, we really need to decide what we want, what we prioritize. And if you want a population of 30 and 40-year-olds that are going to continue to be able to afford a house, then something's got to be done. Doesn't have to be ADUs, but
Ooh, we got to get someone on from Reform Dallas.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. we do because I'm kind of up this alley, and with Reform Dallas, I think that yes, we need more units. We need more multifamily housing. We need more opportunity, because right now Dallas is stuck in a very bad situation where everything's going to be bought and you're going to have a huge stagnation for 15 to 20 years. And there's not really going to be much job growth here. It's just going to be more urban sprawl to the north.
Yeah.
And Dallas is just not going to turn over.
So
I'm gonna disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Here's my thing on Dallas, and I guess I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I just have a different thought, and I'm interested because you guys are more in the industry than I am. I have a perception of Dallas that the nice parts of Dallas are the ones that 30-year-olds can't afford to move into. But there are massive swaths of Dallas that have affordable housing that 30-year-olds could go buy and move into. They don't want to because it's an undesirable place to live because of a crime rate, because of maybe a poor school, maybe it's a food desert, all those sort of things. Yeah. So my thing about Dallas is I kind of feel like a lot of the housing issues in Dallas would be saved by just better local government running the entirety of the city and making people want to live in all parts of Dallas.
Yeah.
And not just north of downtown, in between 635 and Garland Road.
Yeah. Well, and there's certainly that. And another thing I would add to that is the permitting issue. So we have a whole host of construction projects, mixed use, all these sort of things. There is at least a 7-month, Kyle, you probably know this better than me. There's a massive backlog of permitting to build effectively in Dallas. And so that's another part of it, is you get it on the front end because yes, there are barriers to entry. Yes, it's unaffordable in certain areas, but you also get it on the back end. When you find something that might actually work, then you got to wait 7 months for it actually to get approved. So we're not seeing supply come online as fast as I think we would like. like to do. And I think you're absolutely right. Where yes, you have vast swaths of Dallas where there's houses that are affordable, definitely. You mentioned crime rate, you mentioned schools that are underperforming. You could have a 30-year-old who looks at that and says, well, I could stay in Dallas and I could live there and I could buy that house. But why would I do that? I could just go way up the tollway to Frisco or whatever, and I don't have those issues. I have 10 out of 10 schools. I have clean, whatever. It's like clean streets. And it's like...
Yeah, the permitting is terrible. So Dallas, the city of Dallas, their planning and zoning department has a vision. They've come up with this vision, just a giant circle jerk about what they really want in life. No. And it has nothing to do with what the people need.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, we don't want this here. We want this type of buildings here. We want that. It's like, okay, cool, dude. But, like, that's not what the person that wants to sell the property wants to do. And that's not what the person that has the money that's going to buy the property and then build this thing wants to do. Well, that's just not in our vision. So, and that's it. Like, that's the conversation. It's over with. There's really nothing to do unless you have massively deep pockets and like you are a big wig developer and like you can bring the lawyers to the table. Like, that's it. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, I guess, I have sold residential homes that are burnouts and someone's going to rebuild a property and the city will give them trouble about it for months. And it's like, I'm just trying to rebuild a single family home, which it's zoned for. And like, to your point, like, yeah, you go to Fair Park or you go south of City Center or something like that, or maybe even the art district, West Dallas, the design district. And they have these new homes and they look good and they look, but it's like, dude, why would I, if you were, let's say you're a young couple and you're looking to have kids and it's like, well, I don't want to buy a home here because I don't know what it's really going to look like in 5 years. And then if I don't have school choice, I gotta go to the local school, and my values don't align with what the other parents around the neighborhood as it's gentrifying are, right? And who blames them? Like, honestly, like, right. It's really only good for people that like don't have kids or are single or have the time to kind of like let that happen. So the city of Dallas kind of does it to itself.
That's my point. I feel like before we start throwing up a bunch of, rental homes on the backyard, maybe the city of Dallas should do a better job making itself appealing to live in.
Sure.
I think that the city of Dallas has done an awful job. Because so this is a thing with like planning, and I'm saying this obviously as somebody that represents cities and counties. I get planning.
I get it too. I understand. Yeah.
The problem is that in Dallas, again, because of how the city's been run, there's such a limited area of attractive residential neighborhoods, residential properties,
right?
That they're totally unreasonable in those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the massive other parts of the city where there's so much residential housing that the city doesn't give a damn about, and get run down and, become substandard and nobody ever does anything about it. If the city would just do a better job of performing as a city, you would expand the appealable areas, the appealable residential properties in Dallas by more than I think you would if you just started putting single, a studio apartment in the backyard of the M Streets.
Yeah, for sure. And like
Sure.
in like those neighborhoods in particular, they really can't handle any more street parking or anything like that.
But that's the places that you would have these things built, right?
You'd have it definitely, north of 30, like north of the city center, all those places, and it probably would be mostly, younger people just renting the pool house essentially.
Right.
That is for sure. There's no doubt about that. The follow-on effect though is like 2 and 3 bedroom apartments would become much cheaper.
Yeah, and it expands the tax base, right? You have people who otherwise would be out of the city, who are staying in the city. You're capturing that tax revenue, and then the question mark becomes, well, how efficiently can Dallas spend it?
Well,
and it's really there's no easy answer.
So how would and I know we're coming up here on time.
Yeah.
And I could talk to you guys about this all night long, but I have one more question on that. On the tax base, how does adding an ADU really? How much does that affect the property value? So how much additional tax revenue would you be generating from that?
Like, let's say the assessed value is $400,000. You add for the main house. You add an ADU. I mean, it could probably bump it up by like 50,000 or something like that. I mean, it would just.
Depending on
If I'm not
footage,
mistaken,
or-
it adds to the square footage of the overall property, right? So when it gets taxed, it's effective, and this could be wrong, but I think it's added to the attributes of the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're taxed on it, you're taxed as one parcel.
Got it.
And it adds to that. So it's effectively like, instead of a 4-bedroom house, it's a 5-bedroom,
Still
with,
locked in as a homestead for the primary owner.
Sure.
Yes. I think and that is the homestead exemption is something that I'm not sure
Because
the
that would
intricacy
be
of that.
Yeah, because that would be my thing. Like,
No, the
if
whole
it's
thing would still be homestead.
ADU, it's a homestead, so
Right.
that limits
You're only increasing it by 10%.
right, like how much you're actually going to be able to increase it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's but am I mistaken that like a homestead exemption that basically reset, like when you sell a house for a new price effectively, like doesn't that reset? So it's like, okay,
Yes.
I get sold at that, then it resets the thing. So it gets reappraised, all that. I want to say that there's something in that where the ADU then, I would imagine that the ADU then gets added to it.
Right. If you were to
subsequently,
reassess, yeah.
and then it gets reassessed,
Yeah.
would be my guess. I'm not sure how that
Okay.
works, but I do think that you are adding another taxpayer into the city, and I think the argument is that you're capturing that tax base that otherwise would be in Plano,
Yeah.
or otherwise would be in Richardson or Garland.
So I want to capture that tax base in, Fair Park.
I think that would be great.
That's what I want the city to focus on that stuff.
Or the Cedars. You're building out west
Right.
of Bishop Arts. I mean,
I used to live in the Cedars.
Right.
Cedars is a nice
it's
area
a great neighborhood.
in certain parts.
Yeah.
Like there's a golf course down
Cedar Crest.
Cedar Crest.
Yeah.
They had a PGA major there in like the 1920s. It's a great little golf course.
Have you played it recently?
The 1920s.
Renovation's great.
So
They
that's
just
the kind of
redid it.
neighborhood I'm talking about, where it's like
Yeah.
it's turning over. Some places are flipped, some places are burnt, like bulldozed. But it's like
It's impossible to get stuff done because of permitting.
permitting, but it's also like, do I want to move here? Questionable.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm
Am
saying.
I
If the
north of
city-
Michigan? Am
If
I
the
south?
city did a
Like-
better job of running the city,
Yeah.
then you take that question away. Instead, it's like, oh, I can buy a house that's like 2 blocks from the golf course,
Yeah.
and it's 10 minutes from downtown Dallas. Like that's something that young urban professionals would typically like. Oh, it's
Sure.
not that far from the Bishop Arts District,
Yeah.
so
And it's something that always boggles my mind, especially with Dallas, because I will give the city props. It is incredibly navigable as a city. I would say, as some of the most major cities that I know.
Yeah.
It's
that's
like
such a big word for this deep in the podcast.
it's just like you can move around Dallas. Like my parents live in Atlanta, prime example. If I wanted to go 10 minutes down the road to Atlanta, I couldn't even get in from North Atlanta to Buckhead, let alone downtown. You can move all over the place in Dallas, and so it's a great
85 miles per hour too.
yeah. Hey, I mean, the cops, they don't stop you, so you kind of just do your own thing.
Everyone on the left lane is totally good to go. No one's
This
messing
is
with
like the one thing for understaffed police department. You can drive pretty fast. in
Yeah.
Dallas.
I mean, I saw a cop on the freeway the other day. I was like, what are you doing here? This is crazy.
Driving home.
Yeah, probably
Driving
driving home. Yeah, so I mean, it's just like there's a lot of opportunity there, but this is why housing is so interesting, but also so infuriating. Is it's just like there's no easy answers.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers, but there's a lot of solutions. There's just nothing that's easy. So it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Like the men in Gaza.
Just waiting for that one.
All right. Well, if you made it this far, thank you. You made it deep into the podcast. Colin, thank you for joining us. This has been a good time.
Thank you very much.
Kyle, well produced as always. Using the laptop, pulling up the stories, the man with the info.
Mm-hmm.
And also, since you're the one that edits these things, the only one that cusses. So.
Yep. Yeah.
His power's on checks, guys.
Yeah.
Gotta figure this out.
Well, thank you all for joining. We appreciate you joining in. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, follow us, subscribe, hit the notification button, like, share. If you're listening to us on Spotify, again, make sure to follow and get your notifications so that every week when we post, you've got the live, up-to-date stuff, and you've got a whole week to listen to us talk for 2 or 3 hours or however long your commute is. But on behalf of Colin, Kyle, everybody at A Better Dallas that helps put this together, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.